Good afternoon. My name is Bob Bernetti. I'm the president of the board for 2024. Today is the open session for the regular board meeting. A nice crowd. I wonder why. We're going to get started with the meeting. First, I'll confirm that a quorum is present. All 7 of the board members are present. The minutes of the previous meeting of October 18th. Are there any corrections, deletions on the board? Hearing none, I'll select the motion.
Bob, I move that the minutes as written for the October 16th board meeting be approved.
Okay.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand, thank you. Minutes passed. Okay, and the next matter is the 2005 budget. I'll recognize Mike Harrington from the Finance Advisory Committee first.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Mike Harrington. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Finance Advisory Committee, as is customary at this point. The FAC is recommending the 2025 budget to be adopted and approved by the board as it is presented. With that, I do want to thank the POA staff, in particular the leadership team and everyone involved for their time and effort. This was a significant back and forth process among the board, POA leadership, and others. Also want to thank all the committees that were very actively involved in the process. This budget is very thorough, it's very thoughtful, it's realistic, and we think it meets the needs of the community, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And so with that, just to reiterate, the FAC unanimously recommends this board as it is, this budget as it is presented.
Okay, thank you. Just one more thing. The fire exits is one there, and there's one over here. We have a large crowd. Please don't block the fire exits. Judy?
Yes, sir. Thank
We're
you.
ready to go.
Okay. Following our presentation of the 2025 budget to the community on November the 7th, we now move forward to present the assessments and fees to the board for approval. This will be followed by key motions to endorse the 2025 budget along with the reserve and capital plans.
Just want to run through those slides quickly, then I'll ask for questions. The fee slides.
So,
Yeah, we'll just,
do you want any commentary on these,
Yes,
Bob?
yes,
or-
yes.
Okay, so Judy, it's up to you, but I mean, what we've presented here is all of this is in line with the November 7th budget meeting. And in the case of golf, it's an average of a 3% across-the-board rate.
go back one slide to that's the yearly assessment.
The assessment
The
is
assessments were up 3%. The golf average is 3%. The rec, if you go to the next one, the rec, parks and rec rates are up 3%. The docks are up 10%. And nothing for the RV annual storage.
Order, please.
And there's the water rates as proposed during the board presentation to the public. And that is the reserve funding and spend report. We've got the contributions from each of the departments, followed by their capital and maintenance plans for the year, and then the reserves that are remaining after those planned spending projects.
Thank you.
And all of this comes from the presentation on the 7th. These are not new.
All right, is there any
So
comment?
that's a summary of the capital for the year for 2025. The next slide has some of the details of the miscellaneous ones, just so you can see what they are. And then the next slide, that is directly from the budget presentation. That's a high-level roll-up of what we plan to contribute with the 2025 budget. Next one. And that's a summary of the different revenue sources. You can see assessments represent 34% of that total, and the contributions to our total revenue by each of those departments. Next. And that is a summary of what the consolidated detailed budget looks like, and that is also available online. That was published right after our presentation. And that's the 5-year capital plan, reserve cash flow that includes all of our planned projects for the next 5 years, which also gave credence and to the projects that are listed in our reserve study, and it has our 5 major water sewer projects listed there as well, and Tenassie. And that's the summary of the slides, and you can, I guess, go back to the beginning.
All right. I will entertain any comments from the audience on the budget only at this time.
Before we go there, Bob, I'd like you to walk through this, Judy, in more detail. I realize this is the same chart we had at the budget review, but just to highlight what the reserve balances do, where the spending is, and with the fee coming in from the WSIAF and what the balances are.
Yes. Was that a question? That wasn't, you were just making a statement.
Walk through
Oh, okay.
Just so everybody can understand what the
Okay,
lines are.
so yeah, we start off with the beginning balance, what we expect to be up there at the end of this year to contribute. And then we're going to, our plan this year is to put $12.1 million in there from the results of our operations. In the future, we have budgeted $11 million per year. The POA not water sewer projects, that is everything from, that is from the reserve study and specific projects that each of the departments have contemplated that they will be doing in each of the next 5 years. Tenassie is on there for 11.5, and we've got principal payments on our long-term debt, including the CCI balloon payment, which is due. It's $2.9 million due in 2026, so that is included in that 3.6 number. To get to our reserve balance before the water sewer projects. And then we have our 5 water sewer projects as we anticipate that cash flow will come through. We have an amount anticipated to come from a grant for the sewer project, and then we have the water sewer infrastructure asset fee contributions in each of the years. And I'll point out that we started, obviously, the fee started at the end of 2024 in October. So both the spending for the water sewer projects and the fee from 2024 are included in the 2025 numbers so that you can see at the end the total projected cost for those 5 projects is $37.4 million, of which $29 million should be covered by the water sewer infrastructure asset fee. And then there's a projection on the bottom of what we think our cash flow will be at the end of each of those 5 years. And I want to remind everyone again that the FAC has recommended that we never drop below the $10 million reserve level. 2026 has the potential to be below that number based on our current projections. So we will continue to monitor cash flow to ensure that we are safe through this process, fiscally responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the other thing, on the budget, if someone wishes to make a comment, please come to the microphone, state your name, and we'll hear your comment. I'm sorry, the podium. The podium, right behind you. You go ahead, use that, but the next people use the podium. Okay, fine, okay. All right, thank you. Push the right-hand button so the green light is on? Okay,
All right.
thank you. Go ahead.
All right, my name's Roger George. I'm here basically to talk about the amount of the rate increase for the docks as it relates to the increases, the amount of increase percentage to the others. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I never dreamt that we'd be seeing that high of an increase. So I'm a little late to the game. Perhaps it'll make a difference. I hope so. But anyway, here we go. As I understand it, Matt, along with the Long Range Planning Committee, had made some recommendations to increase the rates based on comparisons and a survey they did with other marinas in our area. Most likely Fort Loudon, Wind River, Cherokee, Tellico Marina would be probably in that group. I know from being a frequent attendee of the Marine Advisory Committee that a rate increase was not recommended by that group. So I just want to state a couple of facts, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Most, if not all, marinas in the area provide the following: individual slips for each boat. None of the Tellico docks provide individual slips. They're double walls. So you've got a walkway on one side. You have the increased possibility of hitting each other that you don't have with individual. Most, if not all, those marinas have slips that will accommodate boats that are 10 to 11 feet wide and wider and over 24 feet. About 10% or less of our docks will accommodate that. We've got one full service dock, a few over at Tugaloo. Most of the marinas in the area provide individual electric access for each boat. Less than 3% of our slips provide that same service. Most of the area marinas provide access to each boat for water. Again, less than 3% of our docks are as such. Most, if not all, provide covered slips. Less than 2% of our docks have covered slips. The other marinas provide gas service with attendants during the boating season. We provide gas service at one of our 4 or 5 marinas that we have. And many of those marinas' gas services provide multiple grade of fuel, octanes, and a restaurant. We've got a restaurant at one of ours. So if you're comparing our docks to most local marinas, you're not comparing the same thing. As of note, people outside of the Tellico Village cannot lease our docks. So in my opinion, we're not part of that same marketplace that I believe the survey and comparison was done to justify some of the increase. Might be wrong there, just a note. With regard to the 10% dock fee increase versus the other amenities, the docks have never operated in the red or received a subsidy. They have been self-sustaining for at least as long as I've been here, 16 years. Many years they've contributed significant money that could go to other things in the village. Our other amenities, hang on. The other amenities with proposed fee increases have never been profitable. Okay, we have been always sustained. In one case, the subsidies have exceeded $1 million several times. Our other amenities are equal to, as I understand, or better than ones in the marketplace. Our golf facilities, our recreation facilities are here. Their rate increase percentage is here. Our docks quality and what they provide is here. and the percentage proposed is here. So the justification to use to increase the dock fees to the extent that you're proposing, I believe, are contradictory. We're looking at them completely different. Great facilities and offerings, low increase. Less than equal for the docks, as far as availability, what we provide, a more than triple % increase in dock fees. I think that's basically all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did
Yes,
want
the
to
question is,
just,
any board member have a vote and lease a slip at the TVPOA? Would you raise your hand if you have a vote and you're leasing a slip?
Sir, could you please turn your microphone on?
the right
Button
hand,
on the far, on the right,
no,
on the panel.
Thank you. I just have one question. Does any board member have a boat and are leasing a slip in a TVPOA dock? Would you raise your hand if you have a boat and you're leasing a slip? Can you raise your hand if you have a boat? I wonder if you're leasing
So
a
I,
home.
so I think it's also important to note that the board is not a recommendation from the board, it's a recommendation to the board. So just a point of clarification. We're not the ones that said it should increase.
Well, the MAC recommended no increase, and the dock captains recommended no increase. I'd like to yield my time. Pandora? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mickey DiMartino, and I also yield my time to Pandora Vreeland.
I'm Pandora Vreeland. My husband with a bad knee would like to yield his time to me, whether he knows it or not. Mr. Chairman and board members, my neighbors have elected to donate speaking time to me so that I may complete my comments on an item on your budget. I'm here to speak against the $10 million sewer water overflow tank you've proposed. This massive, smelling, loud tank is unnecessary, and you do not need to take the path you are going down to solve your problem. Yes, the POA does have an excess sewer wastewater problem when we get a heavy downpour, and that needs to be controlled. But the POA needs to run away from the unnecessary 750,000 gallon sewer overflow tank solution. Mr. Lackey and Mr. Reed, candidates for the board, have discovered new information, and that information should change your decision when you hear the plan. I'm asking you to listen and ask them questions about their plan at the meeting Mr. Pillsbury is scheduling next week, and do not take one more step towards approving that massive, smelling eyesore of a tank that is completely unnecessary when you understand their plan. We purchased our homes in a POA-controlled area because we specifically wanted to be kept safe from crazy real estate situations like this gigantic smelling sewer overflow tank that will negatively impact our home's value and our quality of life. The POA's job is to improve our property values and not destroy them. The ACC's job is to protect the aesthetic and property values and the health, safety, and welfare of all members of Tellico Village. How is it even possible our Architectural Control Committee, our gatekeepers, who tell us what paint colors are unacceptable for our front doors, how could they ever approve this monstrous, smelly, loud tank going right alongside Highway 444 between Sequoia Road and Tugaloo Beach in a residential area? You will see it when you're driving to dinner at the yacht club, and you'll smell it too. There is no odor control that can be 100% effective on that amount of sewage. Can you imagine the foul odors this ugly monster will emit? The reduction of the property values alone in our area will far, far be greater than the scope of the issues we're trying to resolve. Property values will go down because they get pummeled by massive-sized eyesore tanks that emit foul odors and generate loud noises from fans running 12 times per hour, exchanging 100,000 cubic feet of air. These industrial monstrosities are never placed in quiet, genteel residential areas. They belong in industrial areas where they are free to look like hell, smell like hell, and make noise 24/7. And nobody is caused by that harm. They're always kept away from residential homes. How many of you on the board would accept an unnecessary, massive turd tank in your neighborhood? Our message to all of you today is this: we do not accept this unnecessary property value killing, smelling, loud monstrosity in our neighborhood. That unacceptable tank solution must be withdrawn. But the proper solutions that harm nobody and do not destroy any property values are viable ones, and Mr. Lackey and Mr. Reed are eager to lay them out to you for your next week in Mr. Pillsbury's meeting. And by the way, Mr. Lackey, in his extraordinary construction career of 40 years, actually built 2 wastewater treatment plants. So here is the bottom line as I understand it. Our mission in reality is that we need to make enough repairs to the lids on our septic systems that are taking in rain flow so that we can reduce our gallons per minute from 1250 down to 780 during heavy rain events. By repairing 500 septic lids, which is a big number, to stop the rain flow intrusion, the probability of our success at being able to reduce our gallons per minute to 780 is extremely high. Already 80-some people have told us in that survey that their tank lids could possibly be big problems. So why is the mission to get down to 780 gallons per minute? In 2026, LUB has plans that are going to most probably be either a new 18-inch pipeline or adding another 12-inch pipeline that goes under the Tennessee River to their wastewater treatment plant. But until that new pipeline is complete, we are forced to share their undersized 12-inch pipeline from the care-in station that goes under the Tennessee River to their waste treatment plant. That shared pipeline under the river can only handle 1,770 gallons per minute. So the 2 12-inch pipes going into that station, of which we own 1, means ours has to be reduced to 780 gallons a minute, so we can share that pipe space with the other 12-inch pipe that also needs to go through the same pipe to the sewage treatment place. We need to get down to 780 gallons per minute only until such time as LUB completes their 2026 pipeline plan. And then we won't have to reduce it down that much anymore. This is phase 1, and it's a bridge solution for us. And it's good until 2026 or beyond. In total, this solution costs $3.5 million. $500,000 for those sewer lids, which is a big number, more than it will ever be, and $3 million for the lift station control upgrades that are needed. This is the solution that makes the $10 million wastewater tank unnecessary. So let me be your devil's advocate. Let's just say that the efforts to repair the tank lids turn out not to be enough to get us all the way to 780 gallons per minute that we need during heavy rains. We then proceed to phase 2. Phase 2, we bore under the Tennessee River and put in an 18-inch pipeline in conjunction with LUB's 2026 planned replacement of their main river crossing pipeline. That would cost us $4 million. Look, I appreciate how you can be troubled that we have invested a lot of money with Jacobs Engineering, with some of it being for an unnecessary wastewater tank project, and that money is sunk when we walk away from this unnecessary and horrid tank. You will be more than able to recover that money by saving us around $400,000 a year by not having to pay for odor control measures, etc., for that horrid tank. You need to rejoice in the millions of dollars in savings over the year you will achieve by not putting in that tank. And you're probably no doubt troubled we're walking away from the TDEC grant for $2.1 million for the tank. Consider that a wonderful gift you never had to open, and be damn glad you never had to use it. Again, focus on the massive savings you will have from not operating or constructing that unsightly, god-awful sewer water tank. You will have saved so much money on all those unnecessary costs, you can actually consider reducing our $80 fee on our water bill. In closing, let me make it clear again. We do not accept an unnecessary 750,000-gallon sewer water overflow tank in our neighborhood. Instead, you need to change course to the smarter solutions that move our sewage down to the wastewater treatment facility instead of having us store it in our residential neighborhood unnecessarily. Thank you.
Pandora, how do you expect me to follow that? I mean, I'm not eloquent as it is. So I just have a few questions.
Your name, sir?
Brian Wethington. Are you guys currently communicating with TDEC over this project, this water project?
We've had communications with TDEC, yes.
Who are you communicating with at TDEC?
Who's the head of that? Do you know?
Currently, we're communicating with TDEC at two levels. Number one, we communicate with TDEC through the county because they're the ones who have to approve it. And TDEC has reviewed this particular project along with the county and approved it. That's the only way we got the
Because I
grant.
talked to TDEC yesterday, and they told me that they had nothing on the books for Tellico Village. They sent me all of our permits, right? They sent me all the information.
They don't issue
so-
a permit for this. The county issues the permit for this. TDEC is approving the grant, not the permits.
Okay, now TDEC says that we operate a sewer and water system here, that they gave this to us, turned it over to us, right? Years and years ago, and that we are responsible for operating it. I have the email, as a sewer,
That's
water,
right.
waste,
Yeah,
and
we're a water
sewer, okay? Tellico Village is responsible for it. So what they're wondering is why are we going through all this? Because we failed to do maintenance on this closed system. The system is a closed grinder pump system that is not supposed to have water intrusion. And that over the years, the water intrusion has gotten constantly worse. And we have done little to nothing to try and stop it. And now we want to create this massive solution. In other words, even in the state of Tennessee, there is only, I believe, 3 major cities that are allowed to even have water intrusion into their sewer systems. And one is in Chattanooga, another one's in Memphis, larger, older cities. Otherwise, it is against the law in Tennessee. So this is why I'm questioning what's going on here and why we're going through all this engineering. This engineering had to be put through TDEC. Before just having a discussion about it, it had to go through TDEC. Just discussing it. And then they have to come out and they have to do site approvals, whatever your plans are for doing it. And when I told them you're putting it literally 150 feet from a home, a 750,000 gallon EQ tank from a home, and 200 feet or less from the water and a park, they weren't too happy. I'll be honest with you, they weren't. So, and I mean, we haven't even gotten to the Army Corps of Engineers yet, or the TVA. So, you people live in our community. You do. You live here. Chet, you live just across Maple over there. So, we need, as a community, to come together and figure out a better solution to this, okay? Instead of spending all this money and then creating a giant monstrosity in a residential neighborhood. There are far better solutions, and we need to figure it out. Now, you're our family and our friends. We shouldn't feel like we're being threatened by the people that live here and that serve on our boards, right? We shouldn't be worried about this. We moved here to be happy, right? Not be stressed. Not to turn Teleco Village into some corporate monstrosity, right? We didn't move here for this. So I'm just asking you, please listen to Mike. Get somebody else involved in it, but you have to figure it out. And I am going to constantly stay on top of this. I'm going to communicate with TDEC through this whole thing, and they told me they would help me because they are concerned about it as well.
Thank you.
Can't even build me a restaurant.
Hi, my name is Richard Pope, and what I want to discuss today is just the basics of the budget, and I want to make sure that we're staying in compliance with IRS rules, because my understanding is operating funds and reserve funds have to be separate, and you cannot commingle those funds. And in our budget here, you're commingling operating revenue with reserve revenue. And
They're in separate accounts.
it doesn't matter, separate accounts.
We have reserve
Actually,
funds.
the
Reserve funds
IRS
normally-
requires it to be in two separate accounts. They can't touch each other. That's where the term commingling comes from.
Well, they are touching each other because you're transferring money out of operations and putting it into reserves. The reserve funds have to come strictly from assessment, so every household contributes equally to the reserve funds.
Okay, I'm not sure, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but in the state of Tennessee, reserve funds are a separate an account that which we put money into, normally from assessments, but it is not required. There are other states, not Tennessee, that require reserves to be managed in a much different way. In Tennessee, it is called pool reserves. And so we can put money into those, and it is completely and normal to be able to take reserves. For instance, if you write a check out of your operating account to pay for a reserved item, to move that money into the operating account to refund that. That's all. That's all we're doing. We don't actually write a separate check out of reserves. Now, Judy, you can stop me if I say something.
You don't have a checking account for reserves?
I'm sure we have, I know we have a checking
So
account.
Tennessee law is one. IRS rules are completely different.
I
And we got to
understand.
make sure. And so what I'm hearing is, I mean, you said there's over $10 million of operating revenue that's flowing into reserves. And typically.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but we didn't say that there's $10 million of operating funds going in there. That's not in our budget, that's nowhere there.
Okay, I thought that's
We
what
said we are funding our reserves to the tune of
And how much of that is coming from reserve assessments?
1/3. It roughly $14 million this year. If you look up there, well, that's all of admin. That's the bottom line. 11 million is the bottom line, but the revenue is about 14 or 15 million dollars for 2025.
So you don't have a separate reserve for reserves? It's just the profit?
We have one general reserve account, and now we have a separate account for the water sewer infrastructure asset fee. But we have one general reserve account that funds all of our capital and reserve maintenance projects.
Because in every POA I've ever lived in, when you do your budget, there's a reserve budget, and this is, $100 a year assessment goes into reserves. Then you have operating, and if you have a surplus in operating, the IRS says, okay, give that back next year, and you adjust your reserve, your budget accordingly. But we're taking profits, we're raising money, and I think where I'm going on this is everything we're doing here is to raise more money through operations to fund our reserves. Increase in the slip fees, the water and sewage fees, increasing all the fees in the restaurants. Everything's to generate money on the operating side. When that should not be going into reserves. We should, on our budget, say we need to put $10 million into reserves. We need X dollars from each household, each lot contributing to that. And then on the operating side, what does it take for us to operate our community, and what do we want to charge? And these are amenities, and normally the utilities were just passed through. I live on the water, so my water and sewage bill is low. The people across the street from me are paying $500 to $600, and that's going to pay the reserves. So they're putting more money in reserves than I am, and that's not appropriate. We should all be paying the same amount. So I just ask you, because I was the president of the association in Nevada, and we got a $14 million charge from the IRS because they were commingling operations and reserves. Now, we straightened it out and only paid a $260,000 penalty. And so I want to make sure that we are looking at this and making sure we're not in violation of commingling the funds as far as the IRS is concerned. Thank you.
Sir, what was your name again?
Richard Pope.
Richard Pope?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
John Martz. Don't want to beat this to death, but I too am going to be looking at this beautiful 750,000 gallon tank. I was president of the dog park when I had to deal with the former general manager. We did 4 surveys. Finally, we ended up at Tugaloo with the dog park. Very inconvenient for the older residents because they got to go up a hill to collect the dog poop. We finally got to Tugaloo after 4 surveys, and it wasn't the place we wanted to be. In addition, we also have a small problem with the Tugaloo Beach. The POA board has not been able to keep everybody and his brother, other than the Tellico Village residents, using that beach. They trash it. Tugaloo residents don't even want to go there usually because it's not Tellico Village residents that use that beach. Now we're going to have this gorgeous sewer tank to look at, and I'm wondering why the POA board seems to think that Tugaloo is the unwanted stepchild of Tellico Village. Why is this? Chet, maybe you can answer this for me.
2 things. Tugaloo Beach is not entirely our property, and by Tennessee law, specifically TVA, we've tried to block that off before and put in, I am told, this is not since I've been here, but I am told that at one time they tried to put a gate across there and it was completely ineffective, and there was a lot of back and forth with TVA about why are we cutting off people's access to the water. And because of that, we've not been allowed to tell people they can't go. In fact, if we were to say that, let me put it a different way. If we were to come at this and say, we don't want anybody but Tellico villagers in Tugaloo, period, we would have to fence that off and come up with an electronic way for you to get in and out to keep people from the outside coming there. That's the only way I can stop that, and without that being there and said, we can't turn people away. Now, we do have the sheriff come in, because apparently, again, before my time, they had some situations where it appeared there was drug dealing going on down there and some other things, and the sheriff has a routine now to come through there at night and check that out, and apparently, again, I've had no reports of it, so I'm assuming that that's no longer happening there.
There's also been rapes down there. We pay people to clean the restrooms.
Yes.
We also have equipment that goes down there and rakes the beach.
Yep.
Why are we doing that? Why isn't TVA doing that? We're paying to take care of that beach. We're paying to take care of the restrooms. We take care of the dog park. Why are we doing that? We're taking care of that. Tellico Village people take care of that, but yet people go down there and use all that stuff.
Sure.
This is the unwanted stepchild of Tellico.
Well, it's not even
now we're going to
unwanted.
have this gorgeous sewer tank down there. Why don't we put that someplace where we don't have to look at it? I'm probably 500 yards away from that gorgeous sewer tank, in the wintertime, I'll have to look at that and smell it. I'll smell it in the summertime, too.
So,
What's my property going to be worth with that stinking sewer tank there?
it is regrettable that there's two things that people haven't addressed. It stinks now.
I guarantee you, that's exactly right.
It stinks now. And there is no method of reducing the smell built into that system as we are sitting here having this conversation. That's one. Number two, that was built there and approved by TDEC in the beginning. It is the lowest point in the septic system, and that's why it was put there. And my staff will agree with this. I have always said, what rocket scientists put a sewer and septic tank next to a lake? But we can't do anything else. That's our position.
2 years from now, Loudon is going to, they're going to solve that problem. They already have that in the works. Why do we have to do something now?
Well, but we're still going to have a system there. That's not going away. We still have to get it to Loudon. And later I'll talk about this, but I met with Loudon yesterday and had a long conversation with them about their processes and what they have in mind. So I think that once you understand what's going to be built there, I'm not going to pretend that we aren't putting a big tank there. Of course we are. And I'm not going to pretend that you won't be able to see that under some circumstances.
Who was the person you met with at Loudon?
Well, let's see. I got the list right here. We met with Jeff Harris, the mayor and the acting manager for LUB. We met with John Davis, director of gas and water. We met with Brett Zimmerman, who's a staff engineer. We met with Ed Edelman, who is a staff engineer. And we met with several guys that I forgot to write their name down who run the water system there too. Basically, all the people that the gentleman you had mentioned earlier met with, plus a few others, and had a very definitive conversation with them about what they were going to do and what they weren't going to do. And I'll talk about some of those things in my report. But there's no argument in my head that Tougaloo Beach would be infinitely better if we could figure out a way to cut it off from the public. But I've made those decisions before in other properties, and it can be done. It absolutely can be done. But maintaining it and keeping everybody happy when you want to have a party with your family and you go down and your card doesn't work and it's Sunday afternoon, you're going to be upset and we're going to be sending staff down to get you in. Now, that doesn't fix all the problem with people from Lenore City and other places coming to that lake to swim and to fish and do all the other things they do there.
But how's that going to look when people go to the yacht club?
Mm-hmm.
If people are coming here to look at Tellico Village,
Sure.
that's the first thing they're going to see. Do you think somebody's going to want to move to Tellico Village when they see that gorgeous spaceship sitting there?
As it sits, as it's designed right now, and again, I don't know if Matt's in the room or not, he can correct me. As it sits right now, when that tank is completely installed and built, it will be 4 feet above 411. And if you drive by there today, there's a ton of 6-foot tall trees where you can't see that at all.
What about on 444?
That's what I'm sorry, what did I say? 444 is what I meant. Sorry,
Okay.
I apologize. On 444, there's 6-foot trees there today. You can't see that area. And the same thing will be true then when we're done. But it's only going to be 4 feet higher than the current 444 road. So at the end of the day, it's something that we're going to have to do, and that's the only place we can do it. Now, if you want to argue that there's other options.
All right. We need to talk about the budget. This was supposed to be about the budget. The other things we have all right, we're going to move on.
Bob, it is about absolutely a lot of money in the budget. I want to hear this.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Donna Reed. Is that better? First of all, I'll give you a thank you. I've sat in your seats before. I have sat on a POA board. It is a thankless job, and I wouldn't have it. So I do appreciate what you're trying to do here, although I don't agree with how you're going about it. I have more than 225 petitions signed by residents of this village in the last 4 days. You give me 4 weeks, and I guarantee you that would go to thousands. People that are against this tank. Its location. We don't feel you have truly looked at all the options, and we're asking you to reconsider all the options, reconsider the location if it comes down to a tank that we need. Now, I managed a civil engineering firm, an environmental civil engineering firm for 15 years in Asheville, North Carolina. They're currently in Knoxville as well. I'm a business. My degree's in business. I'm not an engineer. But I will tell you this. I went to many a job site to meet with a client, and the smell standing anywhere close to that tank can be atrocious. This tank is nothing but a large Band-Aid on a problem. As I understand it, and once again, I'm not an engineer, but I do have a little bit up here, and I am familiar with wastewater. We designed these tanks. We designed wastewater treatment plants, and I learned more about water and sewer in 15 years than I ever thought I would know. My understanding is the main problem is the stormwater infiltration. This water infiltration comes in when we have these pump grinders below grade, or we have a leak from a main line coming from the house into the tank. Now, we watched Matt's video, and he painted a really bleak picture on how we would have to go in and pull all these tanks out and replace these tanks. That's totally not necessary. Most of these tanks are going to be fine. We may have a few tanks with leaks in them. Let's go in, do some hand digging, correct those leaks from the main line coming into the house or from the electrical system for the alarm going into the tank. Correct those issues. Let's raise the caps on these tanks to above grade where they need to be so that the stormwater doesn't infiltrate. There's no need to dig up these tanks. There's no need to replace these tanks. Most all these tanks would be okay. So I ask you a few questions. What's been done? I know there was a survey, and most everyone I spoke to in the last 4 days had no idea of a survey. As Pandora already alluded to, there's 80-some homes that were found to have some issues. I ask you, have those homes, has that situation been mitigated? Have we corrected those issues? Matt could probably tell us, but I'm betting to my knowledge, no, they've not been corrected. Why not? That's the problem. The residential pump grinders need to be upgraded. We don't even have, to my knowledge, do we have a maintenance schedule where we go around, the Public Works goes around and looks at these grinder pump tanks? We've lived here almost 5 years, and to my knowledge, no one has ever come to my property and inspected this tank. Where's our maintenance schedule? Let me ask you this. If we went in and we corrected these issues, the residents could conceivably have lower electric bills because their pumps wouldn't run all the time. That's a win for them. If we corrected these pump grinder issues, the POA wouldn't have as much stormwater drainage going into the sewer system. It's a win-win. Why don't we start there? Let me ask you this. Who besides Jacobs Engineering has given you an opinion on this matter? When was this opinion given? And why are we just now learning about it? Because once again, most everyone I spoke to in the last 4 days to 10 days, when I first learned about it, nobody knew what was going on. This is like flown in from outer space. Jacobs Engineering is the engineering company who handled the coal ash cleanup in Kingston back in 2008. This situation has been litigated in courts, and Jacobs Engineering has been held liable along with the TVA, and it has cost Jacobs Engineering millions of dollars in settlements. This affected hundreds of lives in Kingston, and guess who paid for the cleanup of that? Kingston, their residents, to the tune of $1.2 billion. Have you all thought for a minute how you're setting us up for failure? You're setting us up for EPA, TVA issues when, and to put it in the words of Matt in his video, every tank settles. He says that in that video. Go watch. Every tank settles. So when that tank settles and it's compromised, who is going to litigate with the EPA and the TVA? Who's going to pay those fines? Are you aware? Yeah, we're in an earthquake zone. Are you aware that Jacobs Engineering not only has issues with worker safety, but they also have issues with test tampering allegations? Now, my understanding is this property, the soil was tested for compaction, and the first time it failed. I also understand they're going to retest the soil at the site. Do we want to trust an engineering firm who has test tampering allegations with such a huge matter that this would be? A huge liability. We're trusting the judgment of an engineering firm who, in my mind, isn't viable based on the issues they've already experienced with environmental impact here in our area. Let's talk about liability issues a little bit. Has the board considered the
I
liability?
hate to interrupt you, but we have other people who want to speak, and we have to do this budget.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
were going to go.
I've got a half a dozen people here that have given me their time.
Please let her finish.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Has the board considered the liability issues with this tank, a tank of this size? Where is the EPA on this? Have you submitted anything? The TVA, where are they on this? Have you submitted paperwork to TVA and EPA? Where do they stand on that? I've seen no reports. Army Corps of Engineers? We're flirting with disaster. Let's look at the safety issues. April of 2011, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. A tank such as this compromised, a wall collapsed, killing 2 people. Raw sewage went into the Little Pigeon River in the French Broad. August of 2019, lightning explodes a tank very similar to this one but smaller in Florida. December of 2020, Wessex, UK. A 30,000-gallon tank explodes, killing 4 workers, including a 16-year-old apprentice. January of 24, Litchfield, Connecticut, a 50,000-gallon tank explodes. Are you getting my picture here? You get it. All of these tanks are far from the size of what's been proposed here by Jacobs Engineering. A 750,000-gallon wastewater tank would produce over 100,000 cubic feet per minute of noxious methane gas. Okay, we're going to circulate that air 12 times an hour. That's still over 20,000 cubic feet per minute of noxious methane gas going into our environment. This system would have to be controlled by some sort of filtration system. Did Jacobs talk about that a little bit? Either a catalytic filter of some sort or an open burn. Now, an open burn, we all know what that is. That's an open flame. That's a totally different animal of another sort. These filters are expensive. These filters have to be replaced periodically. These filters, well, you're getting the picture, right? Have you considered the maintenance cost behind this tank? When it would be so easy to go in periodically and inspect our tanks in our backyards, go in and correct these problems, increase the caps. I've already talked about it. To my knowledge, there's no maintenance schedule. We have got to adapt a maintenance schedule. But if you put in this tank, you're going to be facing maintenance schedules with the filters, and you're going to be facing maintenance filters to control the odor. Let's talk about the odor. Did Jacobs mention the odor? There's 3 ways to control odor in a tank like this. 1's chemical, 2 is a bioactive agent, and 3 is an enzyme treatment. Enzyme treatments and bioactive agents will not work in this manner, in this environment, because every household uses soap and or vinegar. And with soap and vinegar, you cannot use those 2 treatments, those 2 methods of treatment. So you have to resort to chemicals. Chemicals are expensive. They're hazardous. They're hazardous to the community, hazardous to humans, hazardous to our environment. Are you willing to inflict that in Tellico Village? So, this thing would take a lot of chemical, expensive and hazardous. Okay, let's talk about sound. The filters on the top of this thing are going to continuously emit a sound. I don't need to say any more about that. Let's go back one more time to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is not that we need this 750,000 gallon tank in our backyard. The root of the problem is our grinder pumps in our backyards. We need to maintenance those things. We need to raise those caps. We need to go in. If there's a leak in any of those, I think there are 4 pipes, you're going to have some odor, you're going to have some mushy ground, you're going to have some soil that's there. You can hand dig around these things and correct these issues. There's no need to dig up an entire tank. There's no need to replace these tanks. That's ridiculous. Have you truly considered all these options? I'm not convinced that you have. We're not convinced that you have. The 225 plus people I've already had sign a petition, they're not convinced of it either. Why put this? Okay, if the last thing that we could do, if the only option that we did have was a tank, what other locations have you considered for this tank? Why put it in the middle of a residential area, feet from the water? You're setting us up for failure. This is mind-boggling to me. We'll have stench forever, sound forever, constant maintenance, constant liability issues. This is a very poor decision. This proposed tank is an assault on our community, and it's an insult to our intelligence. We vehemently oppose this tank. We oppose its location. We oppose the fact that we do not feel the board has exhausted all the options that we have. We're asking you to reconsider. We're asking you to reconsider all options. And according to a document that was signed in February of 2005 by the POA Board of Directors at that time, we're also asking you to hold some public workshops, because according to this document that was signed, with the exception of litigation or personnel issues, the board, before voting for any major issue, has to be open to the public with open votes and an open workshop. So we're asking you to educate us further, but we're asking you to reconsider. Thank you.
I just have a few quick questions. Did you go out for other bids?
We haven't done any bids yet.
Haven't gone out for
No, I mean from engineering firms, other opinions, other solutions.
We're looking at solutions, and we haven't gone, but we have not gone to anybody but Jacobs.
Now,
That's what
let
we've
me
used
ask
for
you,
the last 5
let me
years.
ask you this, okay? You guys live here. I'm possibly one of your neighbors, okay? Maybe not, because you wouldn't be signing off on this tank more than likely. But how is that even possible that you as a board can sit up here and say to us, hey, we've got this tank, we're working with Loudoun County over it, we're going to shove it down your throat regardless of what the heck you think? Now, you know, I heard Matt spewing whatever he spews about these grinder pumps in everybody's home, how long it would take to do this or how long it would take to do that, but yet none of you have ever gotten a hold of a contractor to see what can be done on a large-scale basis to go through these tanks. It might cost $2 or $3 million, maybe $5 million, but not 30-some million dollars and not a giant tank that emits fumes into a residential area. So I'm just wondering, where are you all coming from on this? Because if I was sitting in a courtroom and I was a jury and they were saying that you guys are only hell-bent on this one thing through these giant corporations to spend $30 million of these people's money, that would put a huge question in my mind of what is motivating you all to be that way. Okay, think about that. What is motivating you all to be that way? To behave this way? To behave just closed-minded, single-minded, not open to any other discussions or any other issues or anything? There's got to be a motivating factor on why you guys are doing that. And anybody in their right mind would think that way. Anybody. You have an answer for me?
We are acting based on the recommendations of the Public Service Committee and the professional engineering firm that we hired to give us an opinion.
Right.
That's what
And that's what you do.
We're acting upon their recommendations.
You take that opinion, but you do not have to act upon that recommendation, do you? You don't. You could say, wow, man, they want us to put in a 750,000 gallon tank. This is what a rational person would do, right? Man, we don't like that. Why would we put that in the middle of our community, off a main highway? Why in the world would we do that? And I'd be like, if I was sitting on that board, I'd be like, we're going out for a second opinion. We're going out for a third opinion. We're going out for a fourth opinion. But not this board. Now, you claim to be members of our community. You claim to live here. But yet you're not doing your due diligence when it comes to dealing with this situation. You're not. Now, we elected you guys to do your job, do your due diligence, and look out for us. And that's not what's going on here. If you didn't go out and get more engineering firms' opinions on this, if you didn't look into repairing these tanks, seriously look into it, then you're failed. You're failed. And you're failing us as a community. And do you want to, can you guys live with that? Seriously? You can stand up and look in the mirror with all these people and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I should have went out and got a second opinion. Maybe I should have looked into this, right? Instead of just running off, half-cocked, and taking the first engineering firm's views on the way things should be done. Number one, TDEC said it was our responsibility to maintain these grinder pumps, maintain this closed system, and we failed to do that. And whoever failed to do that should be fired. I would fire him if he worked for me. I owned a company for 30 years. If I owned a company and my job was to maintain, say, nursing homes, right? And the maintenance guys I'm sending out there aren't checking out makeup air units, aren't checking the generator to keep people alive, he'd be fired. Period.
Can we fire the board?
Yeah, you can.
Can.
Yeah.
To answer that question, if you read the bylaws, property owners can remove board members with 50% plus one of all properties to remove us. Well, you have to organize it. So, Michael, you said, did you say where do we sign? Somebody said, where do we sign? You just go to the bylaws, and I've said this more than once in the last year. Anytime the property owners want to remove a board member, go to your bylaws. It'll give you the step-by-step instructions to do so. Not a problem.
So just to address, let me see if I can just address a little bit of what this former gentleman was up here just talking about. So the board really is trying to do due diligence. I mean, the lady that was up before said, where'd this come from? It seemed to come from outer space or whatever. Well, we have been talking about this for the past 5 years. I'm not trying to be defensive. I'm just trying to say this is what's been discussed in board meetings and in town halls. This plan has been being discussed for 5 years plus. Plus, we had open discussion when we actually went for the TDEC grant, the $2.1 million. That was last year sometime, I believe. So this whole thing was talked about then. You know, we're acting upon the advice not only of Jacobs Engineering, but also of PSAC, who has water and sewer engineers on it. So we really felt like we were doing our due diligence. We're not trying to cram something down people's throat. We're not trying to ruin this community. I mean, we love this community too. We live here too. Now, I know Chet's going to talk about it in his update, but the latest thing that's happened is he's agreed to sit down, and we've always been open to talk to people about other viable alternatives. And if this is a viable alternative, then certainly it's going to be looked at. So I can't say I blame you because of the way this is acting, but I tell you, it bothers me that this board is being vilified because we're trying to do what's best for the community. We really are. We live here too. And it doesn't help to be denigrating and to yell and to scream, but if we can have these types of conversations and be open to meeting with people, that's what we're trying to do.
Very good, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, can I add a couple of things here? Let's keep in mind that on PSAC, we had a gentleman there who's still on PSAC, but he's going off at the end of the year, who has over 40 years of water and wastewater experience in a number of municipal locations. He has served extensive hours on the behalf, volunteer hours, on the behalf of Tellico Village, looking out for our best interests. He has asked numerous questions of Jacobs. And Matt can testify, when this gentleman gets in front of Jacobs, he's not a pushover. What is being presented is an accumulation of multiple years of study and review. We can't change the system. All from Jacob. Wait a minute, let me finish, please. Okay? We have spent multiple years looking at this system. You have two primary things here from the standpoint that when Tellico Village was formulated, basically Cooper, or the TVA said to Cooper, you can't burden Loudoun County with water or wastewater. You've got to put it in. And so Cooper put that in. Was it the best system that they put in? No. It's got limitations. And clearly I can see from our conversation today, there are a number of system limitations that we need to do a better job communicating to all of you about. They're real, they exist. The fact is, we've got a main pump station that's got a lot of issues, and if we don't do something about that, what we're looking at is a day where there will be a spill in the lake, and that will affect everybody's property values, mine included. We're trying to come up with a solution that avoids that and trying to be proactive. And so I think, yes, we've got to do a better job communicating. This has been talked about for a number of years by a number of different people. So to say that it was just popped out of left field, no, that's not the case. Not at all. So that's just my perspective I wanted to add.
To follow up, we understand, obviously, what the concerns are about this bank and everything else. And as Ms. Vreeland, is that it? Has said, in the next 7 or 10 days, Chet, the staff, our engineers are gonna sit down with Mr. Lackey, Mr. Reed, look at their proposal, vet their proposal. The board is not opposed or foreclosed from making a change if, in fact, there's a very real and viable solution. We're not opposed to it. But it has to be a real and viable solution. It can't be a Band-Aid.
Why did it take this long? Why did you put the...
Because for 5 years, the previous boards have kicked this can down the road. Very simple. This board, this year, has taken it on itself to make a decision. We finally have made a decision. People don't like the decision. People think it's the wrong decision. But we finally made a decision. We could have kicked this thing down the road ourselves. We could have said, nah. We could have said, Jacobs, yeah. We could have said to Jacobs, we're not doing that. It's too expensive, et cetera. Well, remember what happened in Florida? That condominium that collapsed. Those board of directors had a report saying you had to do this, and they ignored it. They didn't collect any money. They weren't going to go to the people and say, we got to fix this foundation. And what happened? 84 people died when that place collapsed. Because you want to hire another 40 people to do that? That's the problem. Part of the problem is everybody yells, everybody talks about what spending money we spent and the number of employees we have. To check 5,000 tanks, we'd have to hire another 20 people, probably. Or a contract, you want to pay $3 million?
Yeah, or 37 million for a new program? Absolutely.
Well, those are all options. Those are options.
That's right, there are options.
There are
We never
options.
looked at 'em.
And we're- all right.
I think he's saying, though, that they're willing to look at them now, so.
So I think you gotta be careful here of yelling at the board for this, because like Bob said, this has been in the works for several years. I guess I would ask, this has now come up beyond the 11th hour, right? And where was this discussion 2 years ago? And it's like Bob said, we made a decision based on the recommendations of experts, right? Now, you might challenge that you don't believe the experts, or you got some experts that are smarter, and we're saying we're open to that. But it doesn't do any good to be yelling at us,
All right, okay.
because we're
thank
all
you.
trying to do what the right thing is.
That's-
Now, you might, like somebody
Mr.
back there
President,
said, why did it take so long?
Point of order.
Okay, I'm gonna
We're having
change
a
the
discussion
subject.
here. We have a motion before the board.
No, we don't.
Okay, well, let's have one person talk at a time, not people from the audience talking over people. Let's be respectful of everybody who is here.
So-
Okay?
So in the end, I believe this is good discussion. It really is, because we're talking as a community. But let's don't get into the yelling back and forth, because that doesn't help anything.
If I may, I just want to change the subject a little bit. And one thing that popped up that I wasn't going to talk about, people talk about getting rid of the board and stuff. The one thing I see, we've got 48% of the village that's voted when you have the opportunity to vote for 2 new board members. So get out there and vote for one. And secondly, I was remiss when I finished my concern about the dock fees to ask for any comment back to where, am I way off base in my thinking? Did I miss something in the rationale behind it from either, I didn't offer the opportunity for comment back to answer that question.
When we looked at the dock fees, we looked at the long-range planning committee report, which was done about a month and a half ago, which shows where our dock fees are compared to the surrounding marinas. Now, we understand that our dock fees are less than those, and we're not a full-service marina. We don't offer repairs, we don't sell boats, we don't offer out-of-the-water storage, et cetera, et cetera. We're simply docks for the most
Right.
part. So, based on the fees that these other places charge, the Financial Advisory Committee and the board and the Finance Department felt that an increase in our fees was necessary, not to bring them up to market level, but to bring them up to a fair level, based upon the comparisons of all the other docks. That's how we arrived. And I will tell you, the original recommendation was 25%.
Yeah.
And we took it back to 9%, 10%. That's, to answer your question, that we did look at, those are the factors we looked at in coming up with the 10%.
The other thing is there's a lot of maintenance and a waiver tenure, which is almost $500,000
Yep.
going to be spent next year for
Yes.
the docks.
So we've done
we'd like
that
to
for the
recover
last
some of
3
that.
years.
Yeah,
We have done that for the last 3 years, bringing in new docks
yep.
that bring in new revenue in the future. And we've still been able to keep our heads above water, so to speak, with the docks. I'm just questioning the rationale between more than tripling the dock group, who has in general contributed funds to the village, and having lesser quality in comparison to other places, compared to golf and the other.
Well,
Why not? I mean, there's a couple options.
There's a small disconnect where you're absolutely correct in 2 things you're saying, but there's a reason for it. Number one, there's been the perception that docks have been paying all kinds of money into the system, and we've been using that money elsewhere and that sort of stuff. Regrettably, in the past, we have not, in our budgeting nor in our evaluation of the docks, included all the costs. and it is only in the last 2 years that we began to include all the costs.
Understand that,
And
yes.
to be direct, even with a 10% or whatever we said, 10% increase, docks are still being subsidized. They're not paying for themselves in total. So not only are they
okay.
not contributing,
Okay,
they're.
I can see up there, and I agree with you because there have been some things, some charges they didn't, and that's been fixed.
And that's not your fault for not recognizing.
Yeah.
It's our fault for not actually giving you the correct information about what it costs.
Right, but I think even on that slide, when you look at the comparison of docks and our deficit so far this year, about 38,000 compared to 1.2 million and 771,000, it just seems backwards. Maybe, you know, why
That's the budget.
shouldn't we have a
including
higher
the
rate?
10%.
Huh?
That chart right there is the budget for 2025, which does include the 10% increase in the rates.
Okay. And the capital investment for, what's that for? Attenuator? 381?
Yes, the wave attenuator is part of
Yeah.
that, yes, sir.
Okay. Anyway,
Thank you.
Steve, I think you took some notes.
There is one other item that hasn't been mentioned,
Okay?
is our significant wait list,
Yeah.
okay? One method also, not saying that's part of the 10%, but you got to think about, do you price clear them? Do you price clear the docks? Meaning, you've got over 100 people waiting for years.
Yep.
People have slips that they continue to pay but don't use those slots. So the demand, supply and demand, you have limited supply, you got high demand, so pricing equations
Right.
on that.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in the back of your mind,
Yeah,
too.
and I would say that if that was the presentation and I looked at the budget review, that wasn't the reasoning.
No, and I'm not
So
I'm not
it's just maybe a
suggesting it is.
miscommunication of, it still seems a little bit, we're
And I
trying to
would
catch
also-
up.
And I would also
Boom.
mention one other thing. We had a discussion of this during our budget review meetings. We truly don't have a cost accountant in the organization. That used to be my expertise. You are not seeing a fully loaded cost on any of these amenities. There's a $400,000 bill we pay every year for TRDA for the lease.
Yep.
Some of that money has never been charged to the amenities. It's just, it doesn't make sense because you're taking accounting time to spread 400,000. It's 400,000. So what needs to be done, and I suggested we do it this year, is we do a fully loaded cost analysis of the amenities.
Okay, I won't take any more time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Penny Mansco, I have a question about the dock fees. The 10% increase, and I did listen to the November 7th budget meeting regarding the dock fees, and the reasons for the 10% increase were to meet the ongoing high demands of the docks, I guess because there's 149 people on the wait list. Is that true? Okay. So that was one reason for the 10% increase. And then the second reason was to maintain or the essential upkeep of the docks. So that's why the 10% was proposed, correct? Okay. And I don't know if the numbers are available to find out what the revenue and the expenses are for the docks to see what is driving the 10% increase, because there's no price tag attached to these two pieces here. So what is the revenue and the expenses for the docks?
Well, that is the net number right there, and the 421, 396 is the budgeted, that's the forecast for 2025 that we believe we will produce on the bottom. That's the cash that will be contributed to the overall POA from dock operations.
And that's to cover what?
That covers all of the direct expenses that is the net after all of the direct operating expenses that we are allocating to that department are covered. And then we have $381,500 of capital projects, the bulk of which is that wave attenuator. And then we have some maintenance expenses that are planned, $78,000. So the net for this year that is planned will require us to reduce our general reserves by, I believe that's $39 million up there? $39,000, excuse me, $39,000, pardon me. I get used to truncating all these numbers. $39,000 for the year from docks. Now, when the full budget is published online, or you can even go back and look at one from last year that was an example, or look at, if you come to the FAC meeting, we provide the financials every month. You can see all of the different details of the operating expenses that help us produce that number in the first left column. But this, like I say, in the last couple of years, we've only just now started allocating the marine insurance to that department, which is a hefty number. And we've also just started trying to truly allocate some of the payroll costs to that department that were not previously being allocated at all. There are still other costs that probably should properly be allocated to that department that we have not yet moved there, like the maintenance of parking lots that are attached to the docks. There are other expenses that probably should be more accurately charged to that department as well.
Okay, so that is the real reason why there's a 10% increase in the dock fees. It's not for these reasons, it's because costs have not been allocated to the docks correctly in the past. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay.
And now I feel like we have a far better picture of what the docks' operational costs are, but we do still have capital and maintenance projects that will dip us into the red and require us to take money out of our general reserves to cover what we have planned for 2025.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear because those two reasons given on November 7th didn't make sense for the 10% increase.
Right.
Noted, okay.
Your revenue is $822,000.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Sloan. I'm going to beat a couple of dead horses here, but nonetheless, two things. This Jacobs thing. The Jacobs thing really concerns me from the standpoint of the fact that we are in effect violating one of Chet's original positions, and that is not to single source. If you were to go back over the last 10, 12, 15 years and count the number of studies and the number of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars that we have shelled out to Jacobs, it's like sleeping with the enemy. We need a fresh look. We need a fresh look now. It's important. And all this conversation about recuse the board, or I should say, remove the board and so on and so forth. No, nobody said this was a piece of cake. And I appreciate what you guys do, by and large, for the most part. Well, just because I want to trim things down a little bit. But the reality of it is, we need that second opinion, and that is critical. And until you provide us with that, you're not going to have a lot of happy campers. And that's point one. Point two is, I was reading the handy dandy telegram, and there was an announcement in there that we have had a gentleman join the ranks. And I think that's probably not a bad idea. But when we look at the budget, such as it's being presented to us, there's no detail when it talks about head counts compared to this year, last year, and budgets for this year, last year, and previous years, et cetera. We're not seeing the trend. And I fear that the trend is an upward trend. And once upon a time, there was a reception for a gentleman who came to join us a couple of years ago. And I made a comment to that gentleman on that particular night, which I'm willing to bet he cannot repeat at this point. But nonetheless, if we're going to add a person of that particular level, I want to know who it is that we are removing from, or the position more specifically. How are we going to cut down? How are we going to decrease our overall budget? It's not just by head count necessarily, but we've got to do that, and it needs to be evident in a public fashion. insofar as the cost reductions are concerned, it's critical as we go forward. We can't march this budget from now until forever right up the hill. We've got to slow it down and reverse it, at least to some extent, because there are things that we're going to need to do. Nobody's saying we don't need to take a hard look at water and sewer and actually do something, but it's the question of 36, 37 million? There are a couple of you that sit on the board, 36 or 37 million wouldn't even be a rounding error on the numbers that you've dealt with. So to us, it's a much more significant issue. And I would appreciate it if we could get to that, Chet. If we could get to the cost reductions. There's been no serious effort to do that has at all been public, to my knowledge. We get this paper check that's trotted out every once in a while. If you were to take that into business and industry, they would laugh at those cost reductions. We need some hard work done in that particular area. Pandora got up, made some good points. Brian got up and made some good points, but we're not getting answers. And we need the answers, Chet. You are the leader. You were brought in as a change agent, and you can do it. The board will support you. But at the same time, if you don't make changes, where are we going? So, having said that, tell me what you will.
So, first of all, when I say that we need multiple sources, that's when we go out for a bid. And as an example, LUB has a far larger budget than we do in terms of the water and sewer that they're about to undertake. One engineering company to review them all. That's it. No second opinions, no somebody else. One company. And there's a reason for that. If you go out, and Tennessee doesn't have these laws, but if you go to other states like Georgia, Florida, California, Alabama even, they have rules in there that say things like POAs to cover their fiduciary responsibilities anytime they go out for a bid should at a minimum get 3 bids, right? We do that all the time. But then they say for things that are requiring expertise or a true high level of understanding, and they list things like engineers, attorneys, insurance brokers, all of those. And that's not to say we can't go out and shop attorneys. That's not to say we can't go out and shop engineering companies. But it's not based on a second opinion. It's based on who you believe is going to give you the best information that you can get. The board is straddled with the responsibility of saying, we can't just wave our magic wand and tell you this is the right thing to do. All we can do is go out and find those experts and get that information from them. They're willing to put their license and their company on the hook for it to give us the best information that we can get. And then once we get that, the board has to evaluate that and make a decision. And there's liability on both sides of that fence. If they say, no, we aren't going to do that, then you end up like the folks in Florida. And that board and that property manager, by the way, will never, ever in their lifetime get out from underneath that. And so the moral of that story is, and I'm getting to the other questions in a second, the board has to, under their fiduciary responsibilities, take advice from professionals. They can't stand up in here. That's like me saying I'm an engineer. That's better than a joke. And so we can't do that. We have to depend on people who we've paid to be our experts. We have no choice. That's a fact. The second thing is, this year in our budget, before we added 2 people, we did drop the numbers of employees. We added 2 additional people who are the project manager that you mentioned, and I'll introduce him later on if we get there, and also another manager for the yacht club. food service. Those are 2 additional employees that brought us back up to flat. We're now flat from last year. So we've maintained that, and as you've, I hope, heard in multiple times, I'm telling you, we are at that age where we should be flattening out in terms of employees. We don't have that many people moving into the community. We've not changed any additional amenities other than food service. And so we should be flattening out and trimming if we can. The budget in and of itself, Judy, I'm going to say some numbers and then you can tell me, what are you talking about, Chet? Last year, our expense budget was
41 minus 10, about 31. Around
$31 million. We brought this year's expense budget down to $24 million.
We're trying to be flat too. Well, that was the budget.
Yeah.
But we are trying, our objective was to produce a flat expense budget, which is what was presented on the 7th.
Correct. So at the end of the day, we are tightening the belt. We are making decisions that are in the best interest of the community, and we hope that they will work out. Are we going to be wrong sometimes? Yeah, sorry, we are. But we're going to do our best not to.
I'm going to touch on a third item delicately. The schedule that we have for the POA election is for the month of November, okay? And as in we're voting now, concludes next week, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
And one of the things that hasn't come forward is we haven't even seen the 990 for 23. And when you look at the 990 and the money that's laid out for senior staff
Yes.
on that, if you do even a modest Google search, those numbers are not exactly in line with what you see in most communities, municipalities. So are we at a point in time wherein we actually have a salary freeze? Do we have a salary freeze for the exempt employees at least? Do we have a hiring freeze?
The executive staff for 2025 will not be receiving any raises. Excuse me.
Did you say bonuses?
No, I did not. I said they will not be receiving any raises in 2025. Salaries will be flat. And that was the decision made by the executives, not me.
Right through the 990, the 990 was filed on November 15th, and it should appear shortly.
It should be available
It should
online
be
now?
available shortly, yes. It was filed, the due date was November 15th, and that's when it was filed.
Thank you.
So that will be available in the near future.
One other question about this, and people have brought it up, and I don't want to really burn a lot of time on it, but every year when I evaluate employees, I go out to several different communities. When I say communities, I mean groups of professionals with property management. And as I've mentioned before, I've been in this business a while. And I look at what their average salaries are. And in all cases, they give you a high and a low, right? In all of those cases, I'm looking at properties that are our size, that have our level of requirements, our level of management, our level of need, our level of homeowners. And in all of those cases, the salaries that we have are mid-range. And whether any of you buy into that, I can't sell you on that. I'm not intending to. But I can tell you that that is the policy, and that's what I've done for years to look at this. But I always want to be sure I'm comparing apples to oranges. A CEO of a 100-home POA, well, he wouldn't be called that. He'd be called a manager, does not make what I make. You're absolutely right. But he also doesn't have that level of responsibility either. So I throw that out for your conscience. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir.
John Olson.
I want to add one more thing too. When you're looking up the wages and the comps online for salaries, keep in mind when you are looking at the 990, just to be sure you understand what you're looking at, because the information is there. There is a column that will say what was their W-2 wages, but there's also information in there regarding benefits and the all-in package, basically. So you don't want to you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're looking at that information. Don't look at somebody's all-in compensation package on the 990 and try to compare that to just a salary number for that position online. That's just be sure you know you understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, John Olson, talk sewer, talk docks, I'd like to talk water.
Okay.
The water budget for '25 stated that 508 million gallons of water will be purchased next year.
Sounds all right, yes.
This calculates to an average daily purchase of 1.4 million gallons per day. The Jacobs 22 report, water report, on page 24 stated that the 25 average daily purchased, and this is based on an engineering modeling that they conducted, calibration of that model, and studies conducted on the previous 10 years of water usage, would be 1.13. Our 25 actual budget projection of 1.4 is almost 25% in excess of what Jacobs told us we would be consuming. To me, that creates doubt as to what the results of the study were, and concurrently to that, what their recommendations for projects are. If we don't have the right parameters, it's hard to know we got the right project. There's been a lot of discussion about water rates, but what is the real cost of water to Tellico Village residents? Down and dirty, Steve likes to say, the water sewage budget is 8.8 million, of which water is 2/3, so that's 5.8 million. The YSAP is 5.6 million, of which water is 1/3, and that's 1.8 million. The reserve is 11 million, of which water is 40%, or 4.4 million. So total water connected charges in the 25 budget are $12 million. This is $24 per 1,000 gallons. We are paying LUB $4.19. So this is a 560% upcharge. We need to talk about the elephant in the room, irrigation. Not today, maybe next week. Thank you.
This is a pretty good horse. I want to keep beating it. Talk about the sewer tank.
Your name, please, sir?
Dobby Dobson.
Thank you.
We're talking here about, I think, somewhere in the range of $10 million for the tank in that phase of the project. I know there's other things in there like pump upgrades and such as that. So I'm going to assume that the tank's about half of that 10 million. Am I anywhere near right?
I think the tank is 4.5. Tank
Okay.
itself is 4.5.
Okay, so there's another
Last time I
5
saw.
or 6 million for upgrades, and the computer, I think a big piece of it is probably something that's real good, all of it. Upgrade these pumps, they're old, and computerize them, where one man can sit down here in the Public Works Department and control the speed of the pumps at all the different stations, looking at a screen. I mean, that's today's technology, okay? So if you were here, if you were proposing, you wouldn't have half this crowd here today, I don't think. If you were proposing to go ahead and do that.
Well, that is part of it. I mean, there's the engineering study that was just completed shows 6 pumps, and they are all computer controlled.
Okay.
And and somebody in the Public Works garage has a monitor.
Right.
And he can push whatever button
So
he needs to push.
we ought to
So
give him
that's all
something.
part of the, that's all part of the program.
We ought to give him something called a control room. That's, more up to date in what we
It's also,
expect.
actually, there's a control room that will be next to the tank.
Okay, but if he had that, he could do a lot better job of controlling the flow rates through the system than he can right today, okay? I would say go ahead with that, but put this tank on hold. You realize 10% is a low number, but our property values, every one of us, whether you live behind the tank or up at the other end of the village, it's going to drop at least 10%. So, you know, we might as well get rid of our marketing group. We don't need a marketing group. First time a person looking to buy a house rides down 444 and smells and sees that tank, whether he sees it or not, but smells it, or the chemicals coming off of it, you think they're coming back to look a second time? No way. No way. So let's, what I would say too is, in the meantime, go ahead with the computerization and the upgrade of the pumps, but take that other $500,000, and as a homeowner, I'll pat you on the back for this one. Put that put that $5 million toward finding the deadgum infiltration and where that water's coming from into the system. Because once you put that tank there, like several other people have said, for the next 100 years, you'll be running air through it every 5 minutes. It's going to be going out. You're going to have chemicals or some sort of smell. But we're going to live with that the rest of my life and the rest of most people in here's life. That ain't something we're going to get rid of. But let's get busy and find. I keep hearing it talks about, oh, we'll have to add 20 people to the staff. Heck, add 20 people. Add 40. It ain't adding for 20 years. You know, we'll find it if we have something like that, plus an engineering firm if we need it, or some kind of consultant that's found other places. We aren't the only people looking for one. So let's use some other sources and focus the money somewhere there's not going to be now and forevermore.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Cunningham. I've lived here 23 years, and we have kicked this problem down the road many years. I have zero problem spending $30 million. I don't even mind the $80 a month water fee when I've never been charged more than the minimum, because I'm one person in a house with natural landscape and I don't irrigate. However, I live on the street where this monstrosity is proposed. When there was a pump problem a few years ago and you were waiting for equipment and the motor kept going on, the sound traveled up. It bounces off the lake and travels up. And so I must say, when I got the flyer, I thought, how fast can I sell my house? And I've been here 23 years. Spend whatever we frickin' need to spend, but let's figure out some way not to have this, to the gentleman in front of me, monstrosity that will never go away. I was in Gatlinburg this weekend. Do you know they've removed their water processing that was on the main road as you came in, because visually it was such a turnoff for tourists? That had been there. They got rid of it. They moved it. What will the impact be of this thing, not only on the property values of the community in general, but I'm looking at Chota Shores. I mean, the smell will emanate. It was going to be at the beach. It's going to be at the docks. And the noise bounces off the lake. And it does, and at night in particular, you're not going to be able to sit outside. I'm very, very concerned, and frankly, I am looking at how fast I can sell. 23 years.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thankless, I mean, it's a thankless job. 23 years, I've never volunteered for this, so thank you very much for your service. But please, let's rethink the tank. Spend what we need to spend to get it fixed.
Hi, my name's David Taylor. Just got 3 points to make. Don't want to beat too many dead horses. I lived 25 years in D.C. in a co-op apartment and lived through the co-op having to deal with a massive asbestos problem. We were all, exiled for months while it was solved because boards had kicked the can down the road. So kudos to you guys for actually biting the bullet and trying to move forward. That was a good thing that you did that. I practiced law 10 years before I went and became a Fed for a quarter century. And we tried to be counselors at law the old-fashioned way of practicing law, try to give clients the advice they really needed. Now, I'm not your lawyer, thank goodness I'm not anybody's lawyer anymore. If I was, I would advise you very strongly, go get a second expert opinion. I don't know whether, if push ever came to shove, fiduciary responsibility could come up, but don't go there. Don't even go near it. You've heard, I think, the overwhelming opinion in the room, and I would bet in the community, is Jacobs was a bad source for this opinion, this expert opinion that we got. Their record isn't very good. You ought to start using somebody else. But this is like, you know, some valued, loved member of your family needs serious surgery. You get a second opinion for something like that, a second expert opinion, and you need something like that. The community wants a better opinion than the Jacobs opinion, and I think a lot of us feel that the idea that came out of that is a bad idea. And I am very glad, that leads me to my last point, I'm very glad to hear you all say that you're open to hearing other options. I'm glad Chet is having a meeting next week where some of them will be talked about. But my final request would be, please don't take any action now that prevents getting a second expert opinion or locks in the proposed solution as it exists. And I would ask you, if you're going to move to adopt the budget, put that in the motion, that you're doing it in a way that doesn't lock things in and, you know, lets you get a second expert opinion and consider other choices. So I didn't yell at you myself, but you know, if somebody should say, I'm sorry you got yelled at today. I understand it. People's emotions run high. And, you know, the fact that you bit the bullet and tried to do something, in the real world, what happened is going to happen. I mean, Marty was saying, you know, we've talked about this for 5 years. People don't pay attention until it comes to this point. It's just, with the best will in the world, it's human nature. And I guess you're paying a little bit of, you know, the rotten tomatoes are coming your way, and I'm sorry they are. You all volunteers, and I think you do a generally good job, but please don't do something today that locks you in. Make a motion that says you're not locked in, that you will get a second expert opinion, and we'll look at other options.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Gaddy, and I have a question regarding the water rate structure for next year. I believe one volume tier had a price increase. All the other prices remain the same next year compared to this year. And the 2,000 to 5,000 gallon volume tier is the one that experienced the price increase. It's going from $9 per 1,000 gallons to $13 per 1,000 gallons. That's a 44% price increase year on year. I'd like to understand, what is the incremental revenue gain that is expected to be generated as a result of that $4 per 1,000 gallon price increase for that $2,000 to $15,000 volume tier? And I don't know, Judy, if you have that or if someone from the FAC has it, but I trust that there is some number available that would say you're expecting to raise X number of dollars as a result of that price increase, incremental, you know, the $4 per 1,000.
Right, I would definitely have to refer to my spreadsheets to come up to get that number for you. But just keep in mind that we look at it in total, what we need to produce in gross margin based on a high 60% markup on the water rate that we are charged, which will be $4.17 from LUB. And then we spread that, and we tried, the reason it went from 9 to 13 was we want to cover that gross margin, that desired margin, on, and not a dip below it for any of the tiers. So $13 basically is producing a 68% markup for that tier. Previously, we were not covering, even at $3.50, which is what our rate is currently, the $9 was below the 68% markup that we desire for that tier. So this year, we marked it up just enough to get every tier up to that minimum of covering the 68%. Because, and those first two, and we also didn't put any more on the base tier, just trying to be considerate of, mindful of the financial situation that that could be created with the $80 fee.
Okay.
So-
I guess I'm kind of drawing a bit of a straight line, though, back to what Richard Pope mentioned, in that it feels like, now maybe I'm incorrect, but it feels like those of us that have to use POA water to irrigate are being asked to subsidize the general fund and the money's going into the reserve fund. I think a fairer way to approach it would be money's going into the reserve fund, the profits that are being generated from the various services and products that the POA provides. All residents, all homeowners are benefiting from those expenditures. The maintenance, the repair, the operations, the upkeep, the various ways that our monies are spent. It seems to me a more equitable or fairer way to approach it would be for all homeowners then to share equally in those costs. And it feels like those of us that have to use POA water to irrigate are basically being asked to subsidize at a higher rate than others. That's all I have to say. I was disappointed to see the 2,000 to 15,000 gallons get hit and everything else remain the same. I think that's unfair.
Just to give you a little background on the water rates. In 2023, we paid Loudon LUB $2.20 for 1,000 gallons. 2024, this year, we paid $3.50. Next year, they've already approved the rate of $4.17 for 25, and for 26, they've approved the rate of $4.87. So in 3 years, the charges from Loudoun County on water alone will more than double in that 3-year period. We originally had heard this year they were going to go to $5.50, $3.50 to $5.50, but I don't know what happened over there at Loudoun Utility, but they were up 67 cents, and we did not raise the bottom rate to 0 to 2,000. That's exactly the same as it was last year, because, as she mentioned, there are a lot of people, single-family homes, who only use 2,000. So their rate's not going up because, and for those, but we are, God knows what they're going to charge us in the future as far as water, especially if they're going to put in all this new infrastructure. They're going to have to raise their rates to cover the cost of that infrastructure. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jim Vreeland, and I often go by, I don't even mention my name, I just say I'm Pandora's husband. I'm going to be short and sweet.
I'm in that boat.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm going to be short and sweet. I heard lots of bits and pieces about different things here, and I just want to make a quick couple comments. Number one, I heard this lady talking about her water bill, and I can understand about the irrigating. I live on the lake, so I irrigate out of the lake. However, I pay for that privilege a lot more in taxes, I'm sure, than that lady pays. So whatever she ends up paying in irrigation, I end up paying a different way. I also have my own boat dock, and I pay a lot of money to keep that boat dock up. And again, I pay a lot of money because of where I am. And I don't think we should be subsidizing boat docks, not when you have people waiting on a list. That's just my thinking. On the other hand, if somebody wants to buy my house, it's going to be about 300 yards, I should say, due east of that tank. And I want to know who's going to be liable if the stink gets so bad that it bothers my allergies and my sinuses and everything else. Is the Intellico Village POA going to be responsible for that? So I'm going to tell you that my house is available if you want to buy the thing. On the other hand, this tank is 24 feet tall, and I don't see how only 4 feet of it's going to be shown from the road. I don't buy that. It's also 75 foot wide. That's a pretty big animal. And if that tank ever ruptures because of earthquake or for whatever reason, somebody's going to die, especially the people who live right there. They're going to get flooded out. Also, the tank, from what I understand, I have relatives that work in this kind of operation in New Jersey. That tank has to be cleaned twice a year. Means somebody's got to go in there and scrub that tank out after it's emptied. Also, which wasn't mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat these other things, which wasn't mentioned is every time we get a heavy rain, that extra water that floods into that we're trying to contain still ends up going over to be refined. And every time it rains, it costs us, Chet, do you know how much?
45 grand.
How much?
45 grand if it's 8 or 9 times a year.
45 grand, a little higher than your estimate.
If it's 8 or 9 times.
Oh, a year, you're saying. Okay, so there's another savings we could have by cutting down on our leakage that we have in this village. The other thing I would say, I think if you ask the individual peoples here, if you put something out to them that describes the problem, they could probably troubleshoot their own system for you and let you know if there's a problem, and a crew could go over there. I recently had the crew there, and they're fantastic, our local crew. My tank was buried, not by me, but by the previous person that owned the house. And I was having trouble with the alarm, so I asked them to come over. They came over, and they said, hey, while we're here, we're going to put a riser on the tank and bring it up above, the fill that's been put in there. I said, great. It took them about 15 minutes to do that. So I watched it firsthand. It's no big deal. They take the cap off, they slap the riser on, they put a couple of screws in to hold it in place, they caulk around it, put the cap back on it. It's not a big deal. So I watched that in action. I feel that if you ask the public for their help, we can get our help and cut this leakage down. I would like to see a motion, and I'm trembling because I'm freezing. I would like to see a motion by you guys today to stop this and table this until there's more input and more investigation. Is that a possibility? Since you've already got this in the works, I think we're due.
It's not on the agenda. And all we've done at this point is approve a plan. We haven't got any, we got estimates. We don't have any bids. We don't have anything concrete. So there's really nothing to table.
So
we got a plan.
there's nothing to table.
I like to see a table going ahead with this until there's more investigation into it.
I would imagine after this meeting with the gentleman, come December, we'll have a much more, hopefully have a much more concrete answer to give you.
I would just throw one more thing out, then I'm going to quit. Your engineering firm, I understand, was in charge of the coal ash spill over there. And I understand one of the people over there told the people who were working on this thing and doing the cleanup that there's no problem with coal ash. It's perfectly safe, and you can even eat it. So far, they've had 40 deaths, and 140 people are sick. And you want to buy the information from that agency? That, to me, is ludicrous. So I would like to see, if you can put a motion, that'd be great today, tomorrow, whenever. Stop this until you get a second opinion, third opinions, or some more investigation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Not that this will change your opinion, but several people have said this, and I just want to clear it up. The tank is not in service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only time that tank sees any kind of sewer water is if there is there's several reasons. If there is a water event, then we have the ability to move it over into that tank rather than have it spilled over. The second thing is, if there is a break, which we have experienced, in the main line, we have the ability to cut that off and run it into the tank until that's repaired, and then we open it back up again and empty the tank. To your earlier point, every time we do that, it's not twice a year, every time we do that and empty that tank, we have to go back in and clean it. So that's not the twice a year thing. And the third thing is, when LUB gets in trouble, rather than us have to have it back up and have all the possibilities that we get into, we can again divert it to that tank and let them take care of what they need to take care of, and then open it up again to let it feed in.
I appreciate it. So you're saying it's going to require even more service than I'm talking about. Can we?
Well, I need to answer her question. It means that the pump is only running when it's being used in that regard. There's a pump running down there right now, as we speak, And it runs all the time. There's no change in that. That process is not going away. It's going to be running 24 hours a day. But the tank and all the things that go along with that tank is only under these conditions that I just laid out. There may be others that I've missed, but out of those things, that's the only time that pump will be used or be initiated.
How about the evacuation? How about the evacuation fans? Do they have to keep emptying the air in there even though
I am
there's
not
nothing
the
in there?
person qualified to talk about that, but I do know that as part of the design, there is an odor remediation process on that, whether it's fans or some other thing. I'm sorry, I'm not the guy to answer that question, so I won't.
What if
pretend.
power outage?
We have a diesel generator. that will
Already,
be-
or that has to be
No,
part of the
that
program?
will have to be put in. And again, that actually is gonna need to be put in, I don't care what we do. Because part of the problem is you lose power and that pump station goes down, everybody's in trouble.
Can you move the tank over to Loudon?
The problem is, and this is the part where, and looking for alternate spots and all that sort of thing, there are two things we cannot do as a POA. We cannot use our money on anybody else's land, and we can't use our money to fund anybody else's project. So the idea of putting a pipe under the river for LUB at our expense, we can't do that. It's illegal. Even if they agreed to it, we can't do that. And moving that whole system would require us to completely revamp at a far larger price where we pick up that material. And it's the lowest point was the reason it was put there in the first place. So that was never our choice. I would be the first to agree with you. It's not best by any means, but it is what we've got. And to move it, we would have to purchase land or own land from somebody else to be able to move it. And I don't even know that that exists, to be honest. I don't. But it's there because that's where it was put for a reason, period.
So it's not impossible to investigate this, though?
Oh, no. Anything is possible, and if anybody tells you that, I'll say they're lying.
Thank you.
Money can solve all problems.
I would like to interject. An empty tank or a half-empty tank, half-full tank, whatever you want to call it, still emits methane gas.
Oh, no question. That's why I'm saying, when it's filled, our point is the moment it gets filled, we start emptying it as soon as we can. And it's a process of, the tank is never going to go, oh, well, we've got it halfway down, we won't do any more. The process will always be, anything in that tank goes out first.
Yes, but the question was raised, about the filtration system. It's still going to have a filtration system. It's still going to smell. You're still going to have the sound from the filtration system. It's still going to be an eyesore. It's a mess.
Well, the tank is still going to be there, there's no question. In terms of being a mess or the smell or the stink, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not the guy.
Yeah, well, it's there, trust me.
Mr. Dobson, you're the last one, because we got to move on to the budget.
Okay. I just got up again because I hear some things that are a little bit misleading on the water rates and prices and so forth. I'm getting my information from the POA website, consolidated financial statements for the last umpteen years are on there, up through 2023. For the last 5 years, 2019 through 2023, the profit or surplus, whatever you want to call it, that has gone into finance the reserves, if you will, from water and sewer operations totals $6.2 million. And you can talk all you want to about how much the rates have gone up percentage-wise and so forth, and we add 160% on top of that. We made over $2 million last year. Up until 2019, it was 300 or 400 positive one year and 300 or 400 negative the next, and it kept bouncing around. And then all of a sudden, in 2019, it was over $1 million, and it's 6.2. Not one penny of that was put toward paying in lieu of this $80 fee. No, we're going to finance it through this $80 fee. John Orr had a good suggestion, but nobody listened to him. But this profit, we should not be making a profit off of a pass-through water and sewer function. We're not treating the sewage and we're not producing the clean water. We're taking it and paying for it and then we ought to be paying ourselves back for it, and that's it. Not even like the boat docks. It ought to be a break-even situation year to year. We keep talking about, well, they've raised their water rates and we've had to tack this on and do that. Now, Judy, if we aren't accounting for it correctly, if we aren't charging the water system for the maintenance we do on it, that needs to be done. But we shouldn't be making $6.2 million over 5 years, and then on top of that, come up with a $37 million price tag for water and sewer projects and not even apply that to that amount.
To respond to that real quickly, you're right. Over the last 6 years, according to audited statements, you've got a surplus of $6.2 million coming from water and sewer. That funds the reserve for long-term replacement of water and sewer. So when you get it at the wellhead or the spigot, we're paying LUB, whatever it is, what do we pay? $3.50 per 100.
1,000
per
gallons.
1,000. You've got water lines you got to repair. You've got the regular maintenance that comes out of that. The excess is at 6.2. We're putting $7 million in to pay for the projects. And if you look at the reserves, we're contributing $10 to $12 million a year. The asset value of your water and sewer system is about 60%. So you could say, rule of thumb, you need to be putting $4 to $5 million a year in reserves. And what you're quoting here is 6.2 million, which is accurate, over the last 5. And based upon 2023, we put in about 2 million into reserves, which compared to the 4 to 6 is still light. So that's where the extra charge, you're funding reserves for water and sewer replacement.
We hadn't done that till 2019.
That's correct. Because when was the first time we ever had a reserve study?
But you're talking like there's nothing spent from maintenance.
Go to the microphone.
That's not already in the operating expenses in that report, right?
Well,
In other words, that's accounting for the money that the people that had to go out there and work on the sewer tanks and whatnot.
This is the excess of expenses versus revenue.
Right.
6.2 million over the last 5 years,
Right.
which went into reserves,
Right.
of which we are putting 7 million towards this project, number one. Number two, that 6.2 is over 5 years. I would argue it has to be 4 million at least per year. And we're only generating 2. So that's where the excess goes.
But you're looking at it.
But
Sir,
you have
could
to
you
be at the
please,
microphone.
could you
But
go to the
I'm
microphone,
through
please?
discussing this. We can have a separate side discussion.
Just, ma'am, quickly as possible.
I
We
will.
have to move on.
I have just a couple of things.
Okay.
My name's Toby Henry. I live in Kahiti. My first concern is I went online and I was looking at a POA board member posting about voting, and there were only 2 candidates listed. Not all the candidates were listed. And I was concerned about that because there are people that might be looking at that and not be aware of everyone that was running for a position. That has since been corrected, but I located that about a week and a half ago. So I was very concerned that all candidates were not listed. That's just one point. The other point is I'm a widow, moved here in 2018. Love the neighborhood, love the people, and I thank you guys all for your service. I know it's not easy. But my bill without any irrigation at all is over $200 now with a month with the $80 fee. And maybe to some that doesn't sound like a lot, but I have friends that live in other neighborhoods and their bill compared to mine is a third of that. It's a very hard thing. It's difficult. But those are basically the 2 points that I had, and I am concerned about the revenue. I am concerned about going with a report that was generated from Jacobs approximately 6 years ago. We've had significant growth in Tellico Village as a whole. And that in itself creates for me a problem with going with a report that is 6 years old, thereabouts. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah Solis. I have a question for Steve on the docks. So you said that there was no cost analysis done for the docks. Did I hear that correctly?
You did not.
What, okay.
What I
There-
said was, it has not been accounted for under a full costing methodology.
Okay, which is important.
It's different. There are significant costs that are not allocated on all our amenities because it makes no sense from an administrative point of view to do so.
Okay.
So they're not fully costed.
Okay,
What has to happen is a separate financial analysis
okay,
to look at fully costed amenities.
okay.
That's what I said.
That's what I needed to understand, because I could not understand how you budget something if you
Well,
don't have a cost analysis.
Yeah, just a simple example of the docks is the marine insurance is about $30,000 a year for insurance, just for the docks. That was not included
Okay,
previously.
okay.
If that
Yep.
30,000
Yep.
was allocated to the docks
Yep.
and to the marine budget, dock budget, it would obviously increase the,
Okay, I needed clarification, because I understand
that's
budgets.
that's just one aspect of it.
Forgive me, Bob, that number's wrong.
Oh,
The insurance for the dock is $180,000.
oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a
Sorry.
quick question about the dock insurance? I asked this question at the dock cap meeting the other day, and I'm not sure I got the right answer.
the mic, sir, please.
I'm asking a question about the dock insurance. I asked this question at the dock cap meeting the other day, and I wasn't sure I got the right answer. I understand that the dock insurance, we're being charged, we have 900 slips, and 16 are covered, and we're being charged insurance rates under covered marinas, as opposed to not. And if that's not correct, then thank you very much, but I just thought that that was the situation.
There's a separate fee for the covered ones.
Thank you. So we're only being charged a separate fee for the 16 that are covered, and all the rest are being charged a different rate?
That's at a higher rate, yes.
The covered ones are at a higher rate.
Wait,
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
hang on,
Hang on.
it's not different. They stop, well, Mitzi can answer this, or I can answer this. I guess it was not my first year here. Maybe it was my first year here. We had a huge storm, went across Tennessee
Right.
and took out all kind of marinas and all those things. And insurance said, no more. We're not covered. We're going to put a flat fee. If you got a dock, I don't care if it's covered or not covered, it's this fee
Okay.
per slip. And that is how we're being billed. I apologize for inferring that.
That was when the snow embargo and
Yeah,
T-Bar
oh, yeah.
moved all the boats out of.
Yeah, I mean, the insurances went crazy.
Okay.
So,
That-
yes.
That 10% thing is still stupid.
Mike Gregory, I just have a very quick clarification question. Is the standard applied to the dock fees going to be applied to all of the other amenities as well, as far as setting the raise in our fees?
The answer is no.
No, sir.
3% except for the,
Docks
As
are
far
10,
as
but the
hidden
others were
fees
3.
that weren't looked at before, are there other hidden fees for the other amenities that aren't being considered?
No,
Cost
well, I mean, we're,
allocation.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so here's the problem that the docks are getting caught up in. The problem is that with golf, we look at everything besides how many blades of grass we put down. It is to that point of nauseam. And in the past, as we accurately said, the docks have just been, we're going to charge you X number of dollars, this is how much money we made, and that's it. There's no comparison, there's no cost analysis, there's nothing. And so we started looking at, well, I got two guys who are going around repairing docks all the time. I've got, all the things that go along with that, things we've added. So when we started putting all those costs together, we realized that docks are being subsidized a lot. And even though everybody thought they were paying for it, which again, we look like the village idiots because we didn't come up and give you that kind of number earlier on. But we're looking at it, and here it is. So that's the 10% difference there is because docks was behind in its increase of what it should be contributing, and they're still being subsidized. And the same, golf is being subsidized to a certain degree, and so is the Parks and Recs. They're being subsidized too as well. And I would not say that we apply the same to all because they all have different costs. and different parts to their amenity.
Well, I thank you all for your service, and thank you for answering the question. It's just jumping from 3 to 10, and it really just stood out.
No,
And
no,
that's the only point I wanted
Was
to make.
very much aware that was going to be the case.
Thank you.
I just have a 10-second question. So do you agree at this point to not go forward with the tank as it's proposed? That's what everybody wants to know.
We're going to look at the other alternate proposal, and we're going to study the alternate proposal and discuss it. And after we've done that and reviewed it, then we'll decide whether what's going to happen one way or the other.
And will you keep us informed?
Yes, definitely.
By how?
Well, there'll be a total,
So here's what we're going to do. I'm meeting with the gentleman. We're going to review it. We're going to allow them the opportunity to give us all their details and go through the entire process. I will have certain people there who we've used to do that, to include the heinous Jacobs Engineering. And they will be there as well. Once they've given us that, we will evaluate that, and then we will come back to the community and the board and report on what we found. And the board will have to make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
It cannot. In fact, the people who are doing that, who asked to give this information, has requested that it be a small meeting. And the reason I'm agreeing with that is that today, we should have been done 2 hours ago, but everybody needed to have their voice. I'm okay with that. In this meeting, we got to be in the weeds, like really in the weeds, and understand exactly what's going on. And to have 47 people in there trying to comment, trying to make sure you heard their opinion, trying to interject, will take away completely from that. And I believe that we need to respect their time enough to give them the opportunity to clearly and without interruption deliver what they believe is a better plan.
Could you square that circle by having that viewable on video, but no comments?
At this point, what we're going to do is that we'll put together a response and along with their written response so that everybody will have a chance to see what their thoughts were, what our thoughts were, and then in the board meeting, we'll review that again.
Transparency helps.
Sure. No, I got it. We're looking at a time either Monday or Tuesday, and I've been the culprit. I have not been able to get the time to put it all together.
okay, thank you all. We'll move on to voting on the budget.
Judy.
Mr. Treasurer.
Can you move back to slide 2 of the presentation, please? Okay, so Bob, I move that the monthly assessment rate for all Tellico Village residents, property owners, I should say, is increased by 3% to $181.53 starting January 1st, 2025.
I second.
Been a motion and a second to increase the rate 3% on the monthly annual assessment. Any other discussion by the board members? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion is passed, 6-7. John's back, 7-0. Okay? Next.
Next slide, please, Karen. Okay. I move that we approve the golf fee schedule as presented up there, effective January 1st, 2025. By up there, I mean the schedule presented in front of the meeting, which is an average overall 3% increase on all green and cart fees.
Second. Sorry, second from Ed? Who was the second?
Me.
Oh, Marty. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of the 3% increase in the golf rates? All in favor? Thank you. 7-0.
Bob, I move that we approve the 2025 Park and Recreation fee rates as presented here in the schedule, which is again an average 3% increase across the board for both household, family, and individual member rates effective January 1st, 2025.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Groman. Motion made and seconded to increase the park and recreation rates as indicated, 3%. All in favor? Okay, 7-0.
Hey, the people in the audience, if you want to chat, if you don't mind to do it outside, there's a lot of sound online for the people that are trying to listen.
Okay. All right, next.
Bob, I move that the board approve the docks and RV rate, 2025 rates as presented in the schedule, an average 10% increase on docks, except for an adjustment related to the kayak top rack, and then no increase on the RV annual storage, effective January 1st, 2025.
Any second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Any discussion? All in favor of the dock and RV rates? 7-0. Water rates?
Bob, I move that the board approve the water and sewer public works rates for 2025, effective January 1st, 2025, as set forth in the schedule on the tiers for water and sewer, tank installation, connection fees, and the facility fee, which is, as I understand it, related to inspections.
So move.
Second by Mr. Willis. Any discussion? All in favor of the public work rates? 7-0. Thank you.
Karen, can you go 2 slides, please? Okay. I move that the board approve the 2025 capital and reserve maintenance spending plan as set forth here, and there is also a second supplemental schedule, if you go to the next slide, Karen, that totals, okay, you can go back, please. Total $21,083,000 for all projects, and this has been identified on a project-by-project basis for the 25 year.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people know that even though we approve it here, well, these are going to come back to the board to review and re-vote on them individually in a lot of these cases in the future.
Yeah, technically, we're
Yes.
approving a budget. We are not approving projects.
Exactly. So even though you see money there for the elevated storage tank, that does not mean we're approving it today. It means it's in the overall budget, but it will come back when we have the bids that will, at that point, have to approve that individually.
All in favor of the capital budget? 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, a couple slides forward, please. Okay, thank you. Bob, I make a motion that the board approve the 2025 operating budget for revenues, expenses, and net income as presented. So this is a macro overview, and then if you go to the next 2 slides, there is a listing of the revenues broken down by various categories, and then here is an overall budget starting with revenues and expenses to get to a net income projected or estimated net income number for 2025 of $9.6 million.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Ingram. Any comments, questions?
Could you go back to the next slide? I just want to make a point, people, that say that the assessments only pay for about 34% of our budget here. So, you know, we have to, a lot of this revenue is generated based by our services here and our fees. So when we raise our fees, that really impacts what we can do on the assessments all the way across.
All in favor of the budget, the yearly budget? So 7-0 is approved.
Okay, and then Karen, if you can go forward. Okay, so, Bob, I move that the board accept the 2026 through 2029 capital maintenance projection as a planning document, subject to change based upon continued review. And we show basically here a projected estimate of contributions to reserves and various capital and reserve maintenance projects over the next 4 years beyond the 2025 year.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Inkrat. Any discussion? All in favor of the projected vote? 7-0, thank you.
Bob, that's all you have to hear from me.
Okay. All right, do you want to, well, we only supposed to be out of here at 5 o'clock. First of all, I want to thank everybody who came and for their opinions, suggestions, ideas. The board is always receptive to the property owners and their ideas and their comments, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing is set in stone. This plan can be changed. It's just, the question has got to be a viable and really a plan that'll work, okay? You want to do your report quick, or do we need to go to the monthly financial report to do there's a couple of items on the financial report for,
The only thing I would like to do is be
expenses.
sure, even though we won't have time. Whatever. Okay. Thank you. I want to be sure that everyone has the opportunity to meet my new project manager, Scott Macrae, and he will be working with me directly on any and all projects that we are doing. And he has a great background, and we will post some of his information online too as well. And you probably aren't going to have time for it.
No, it's about 5 o'clock is the first.
It's 4 o'clock right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
So sure, Scott, come on out.
they haven't changed that clock. Matt, come on.
Come on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought it was. We have another hour of this fun. Mr. Macrae, good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you, Bob, and board. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm sorry that the number of folks that left had to leave before I could give you some of my credentials. All right, sorry. Again, just thank you for being here, for allowing me to be here.
Try that one.
All right. And again, my name's Scott Macrae. You can see a couple of my credentials there, but I'm a registered professional engineer. I am a certified program and project management professional through the Project Management Institute. Oops, wrong way. I just want to first kind of talk a little bit about myself. I'll give you some background in my experience, and then describe a little bit about how I plan on managing these projects, and let me just put everybody's mind to ease. One of the first things I will do is make sure we're doing the right projects as we move forward. I got that pretty clearly from everybody in this room, and I've been hearing it from folks in the community. So yes, rest assured that everybody's voice will be heard as we move forward. So my wife Doreen and I moved to Tellico Village in September of 2022 from San Antonio, Texas. We built into Motley Shores. We rented in Chattooga Coves for the first year and had a wonderful rent house that was built during COVID and had a number of water and sewer issues. So I'm very familiar with what many of the folks have brought up here and how they were resolved. In building the house, I functioned as my own general contractor, the design architect. The house is certified Energy Smart from DOE and Zero Energy Ready, and it's also Smart Sense water use from EPA. I developed the house design. I took care of all my own permitting, including submitting to the ACC, went through that wonderful committee experience, went through the county and TVA permitting processes. I did a bunch of the work myself, including the painting, the plumbing, electrical, all the networking, and much of the finished trim. So I know what I'm looking at, and I know how to manage these projects. And I filed for all inspections and the certificate of occupancy. In my spare time, I did join T-BART as a crew. I've upgraded to captains. I have my Coast Guard 100-ton captain's license. It's still active, and I'm a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And I also go to the gym every morning at 5:30, so if you want to talk about the projects, please feel free to meet me there as well. Some of my professional background in education and training, PhD in construction and engineering management, focusing on risk management from the University of Maryland. I was an adjunct professor there for 6 years. Got a master's in engineering management from the University of Massachusetts, focusing on quality and risk management.
And my undergraduate, I'm a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I started my career in the oil and gas business. And again, I mentioned registered professional engineer and project and program manager. And those are all active registrations. Even though I came to Teleco to retire, I kept my credentials up to date because I felt it was important. And when the opportunity came up to give back to the community, even more than the T-BART and Coast Guard Auxiliary, I felt like this was something I really wanted to do, and hopefully you'll all will think I do it well. I've managed projects from $1 million up to $250 million, and have project teams from 6 to 550 people. My last job, I managed a 150 person team in Montgomery, Alabama, where we ran the worldwide internet for the Air Force. And all during COVID, my team and the security force were the only ones on the base. I also had cybersecurity and cryptology for the 25th Air Wing and Air Force One, so some pretty responsible positions there. Also managed a large risk budget for the Bay Area Rapid Transit expansion in San Francisco, San Jose area. When somebody asked, I think I saw online, they were looking for a third-party consultant, and one of the companies you mentioned you wanted to look at was WSP. I spent 3.5 years working for WSP, so I'm your third-party consultant. I say that facetiously, please. I've managed a large portfolio for construction of 6 buildings and the software development when the Army shut down Fort Monmouth in New Jersey, for all you Jersey folks, and moved down to Aberdeen Proving Grounds. One of the fun things when they were building the building, they forgot that since they were putting in an electronics and communications building, that Aberdeen Proving Grounds tests all the weapon systems for the Army. Therefore, things go boom, and they blow stuff up there. And they forgot to put in the design until we picked it up during the design phase, explosion-proof windows. So I know what to look for when we're going through there, and I've managed a lot of subcontractors and look forward to doing that on these projects. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about on Tenacity, because that's the first project I'm jumping into, although I've already been to meetings with LUB yesterday, and we've had a couple of meetings already with the architect and the building contract, the general contractor for Tenacity, so I've been in those this week. So I started on Monday, and I've already, I think, starting to get my feet on the ground. Basically, looking at the contract, I think everybody knows this, it's a $9.9 million guaranteed maximum price contract with incentives and bonuses for the subs and the contractor to value engineer savings. We've already talked about some of those in this first meeting, and we'll continue to do so. The contract also includes appropriate bonuses and incentives for the foreman and the contractors to find these value engineering pieces. So I think the folks did a really good job of putting this contract together, and I'll be working with the contractor to make sure we get all that. That guaranteed maximum price, just for everybody's information, and this was presented at the last meeting, doesn't include the owner-supplied things that we're going to be providing from the village, obviously the kitchen equipment, interior furnishings, landscaping, things like that. All the building and permit applications have been submitted. We're waiting for feedback there, and I believe we've scheduled at this point a December 2nd groundbreaking, and then construction is going to be done in 4 phases. And for all of you golfers, the key feature here is we will keep Tenacity Golf Course running during the entire construction process. And that's some of the key to the phasing, so that you can still get in and out of Tenacity to use that course and to keep that thing moving. And the docks, thank you. Yes, very good. One of the things we're going to do there, we have to look at The site grading plan, obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes to the grade there. We have to have new parking lots and all. We will be installing, as part of the initial phase, some new cart paths in order to avoid the construction activities so the golfers can get from the course in and out of the cart barn and things like that. We've got to install temporary power, so we'll keep the golf shack and the docks operational during that period of time. And we're looking how to do that in the most cost-effective way. And I will be updating this slide on a monthly basis so that when we come here and report to the board, you know what we're doing, you know what our plans are for the next phase, and how we do that. And then, one of the things I wanted to assure everybody, there's two things that obviously we have to do. One is listen to all the folks. I've already got meetings scheduled, as Chet mentioned, with some of the folks that have differing ideas next week. So we've got that scheduled. I've been looking at the old Jacobs reports, all the other reports that have been out, long-range plans, previous finances, and all. I've probably been engaged for the last 6 or 8 months looking at some of this. So it's not like I just came on board Monday. So I'm pretty familiar with where all of this goes, and we'll be delving into all of the other information as we go. But I will be putting together a Microsoft project schedule for all of the, we're getting out of focus there, if we could refocus that. But I'll be putting together a Microsoft project schedule, and then based on my previous experience, actually putting together an earned value management schedule that I'll be reporting to the board. So basically what that means is the contractor's schedule on every one of the projects will be broken down into work packages. A budget will be applied to each of those work packages, and then we will track costs and physical progress against each one of those work packages. So I'll be able to report to everybody on a monthly basis how we're doing and how much money we're spending and how much progress we're actually making, not just how many dollars were spent, but how many dollars were spent against the budget, projected budget, and how much progress we're making against that budget. So we may be, let's say as an example, we're $10,000 over our projected budget for the month, but we may have made $15,000 worth of progress, so we're really $5,000 under budget. Conversely, we might have spent $10,000, but only made $5,000 worth of progress. And I want everybody to know that, because that way we can check progress and come up with corrective actions on a regular basis. And we'll be reviewing that with the board, and I will, of course, be reviewing that with the contractors. And I think I forgot to mention one of the things when I was going over my background and experience. I've been in this business a while. 1995 through 1998, I led the team that set up for the Air Force all of their environmental remediation programs for all of the bases that they were closing around the world as part of their BRAC processes. So I've been in the environmental business a long time as well as the software and IT and construction side. So I've got the environmental background and experience that I hope that we were looking for, and hopefully that will do well. A couple other things. As I mentioned, my master's and PhD programs were focused primarily around risk management. One of the things I plan on doing with the contractors on every one of the projects is identifying key risks to that project and setting up risk matrices, and identifying and then quantifying those risks and documenting those in a risk register, so that what we can do is identify the triggers, the responses, and the appropriate responsible party, so that when we see a risk coming or when we see a risk approaching, we can take the appropriate action and move forward with that. And that will be done on a weekly basis to Chet and with the contractor, so that we'll be reviewing those risks and hopefully can eliminate any cost overruns or find any savings that we can And remember, risks are also opportunities. So risks can be a positive thing if we identify an opportunity and say, can we capitalize on this and move forward with that? Another one that I didn't put on this slide, but in a meeting this morning I was talking about is a communications matrix as well. Who are the decision makers and how do we have to inform them? Who are the interested parties and how do we inform them? And who are the folks that just need general updates and how do we communicate with them? I think one of the things I clearly heard today in all of the comments that people made is that we've been on these projects for a long time, but not everybody knew about them. So it's up to me to make sure we get those communications out to folks and that they have an opportunity to respond so we don't end up with some of the types of comments that we had today. And I really take that very seriously. And so the reporting items, I will add items to the slide that you want to hear about or that the board tells me I need to report to them. I'll update the slide deck on a regular basis and report out to, again, as I mentioned, the decision makers, the very interested parties, and you just need to be informed type folks. And for all of those folks that said they hadn't heard, and a lot of the people that made comments left earlier today, so please get the information to them. I'm willing to sit down with any and every one of them at any time in any meetings. So if the new villagers want me to come talk to them, we're more than happy to do that. If the conservative club, if some of the ladies clubs, the scrapbooking club, any of those folks want to have information and you want to sit down and find out where we're going and why we're doing this, let me know. I will make the time to be there. And that's all I had, I believe. I think I'm out of slides. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Scott, I've seen you at lots of meetings in the last 6 months, like PSAC meetings, communications meetings. So he is, as he said earlier, he's not coming in cold. He's been here looking at this stuff as a resident for the last 3 to 6 months at least. We run into each other all the time.
We do, thank you.
Have we established the target final date yet, or is that too early for Tenacity completion?
It's too early for me to tell you that, but I will report that. As soon as we know when we've got all the permits and an NTP, notice to proceed, I'm sorry, I will be putting that schedule together, and that will be part of my first report because I've got to build that budget-loaded schedule so I can start tracking earned value, and we want to start looking at things like grading, how do we not do things over. I'm very much about doing it right the first time and not redoing things, and there's going to be some interesting areas that we might have to work 2 or 3 times, but let's always be making progress.
Scott, welcome aboard. Thank you for taking on the challenge here. We appreciate that. Marty, Ed, myself, are board members that will be focused on the Tenacity project in detail. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. My wife asked me why I was doing this, and I said I needed something to do in retirement.
Do you want to give a report or check? Do you want to give a report or go on to? Okay, all right. Judy, we'll go to the monthly financial report. High level. Huh.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's start by not repeating his slides. There we go. I'm not a professional engineer. Okay. Let's look at the balance sheet. Our cash balance is up $7.9 million since December. We're earning a weighted average rate of 4.9% on our reserve balance and 4.15% on much of our operating cash. We'll take a little closer look at the rest of our cash here in a minute. We continue to have a strong cash position. Let's look at our total debt and liabilities. Total liabilities are $211,000 greater than December 2023. Our asset base, which is up $7.9 million, has increased quite a bit more than our liabilities. Our debt-to-equity ratio remained at 19% this month, down from 23% at the end of 2023, reflecting continued debt reduction. By preserving our borrowing capacity, we're well positioned to address our upcoming infrastructure projects and any unforeseen challenges. Let's look at some other balance sheet highlights over on the other side. Accounts receivable and allowance for doubtful accounts. The health of our accounts receivable remains strong. The ratio of the allowance to the AR balance is 49% this month, improved from 59% at the end of 2023. Looking at the information on the suspended accounts, the balance due from suspended accounts is down for the month and year over year. The current balance of $969,000 represents 50% of our current AR balance. Suspended accounts, once again, are those that are 90 days or more past due. Unearned revenue, the balance there is $5.5 million. As we proceed through the fourth quarter of the year, we continue to see many of the early prepaid user fees transitioning to recognized revenue. Upfront payments from our residents have provided a significant boost to our cash flow through much of the year. And as you can see, the composition of the balance is up there on the slide. Utility assessments represent 48% of the current total. This balance also now includes funds being collected from our water sewer infrastructure asset fee. In summary, overall, this snapshot continues to show a healthy position for our liquidity and accounts receivable with controlled debt levels. Here's a look at our cash positions. As you can see, the $4.3 million in total Tenacity insurance proceeds that we're holding, and now the $450,000 in the water sewer infrastructure asset fee account fund. Our unrestricted reserves totaled $20.3 million. This is a new slide in here this month to share with you how our water sewer infrastructure asset fee collections and spending will be reflected on our financial statements. Now that we are collecting and will be using this fee to pay for our 5 projects, I wanted to share how you guys will see this when you look at the financials. This process was recommended and approved by our auditors at Coulter & Justice. As cash is collected, it will be deposited into a separate account labeled Water Sewer Infrastructure Asset Fee Account Fund. It will also be entered as unearned revenue with a water sewer addendum onto it to identify it as such. It represents funds collected but not yet spent. When the fees are used for approved projects, funds will be taken from this account and construction in process will increase. This represents ongoing work for one of our 5 approved projects. Also, at this time, unearned revenue will decrease and the water sewer infrastructure fee revenue will be recorded as earned. The construction in progress total will grow as these projects continue. Finally, when the project is completed, the construction in progress will decrease and the completed project will be added to our fixed assets. This asset then starts to be depreciated over its useful life. Here's a look at our long-term debt. As I continue to say, let's always remember that we have that $2.9 million balloon payment coming due for CCI in December of 2026, and our golf cart lease expires in September. With recent interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, the prime lending rate now stands at 7.75%, while the long-term lending rate average thus far still remains at 6.84%. Here's a high-level look at our consolidated financials. Our year-to-date revenue is better than expected. Our cost of sales are relatively flat, while our operating expenses continue to beat expectations. Other income is largely attributable to the receipt of our Tenacity insurance payment of $1,776,000 in July. That was our final insurance payment. Our net income on this slide includes the insurance proceeds and totals $10,070,000. Excluding the insurance proceeds, our net income is $8,294,000, which is 30% better than budget and provides a net surplus that is 23% above the budget. So look at our revenue. Total revenue to date is $35 million, which is $1 million better than expectations and 26% greater year over year. The addition of food service is the biggest driver to the variance for the year-over-year results. October results alone were 7% better than expected. Some departmental results that contribute to that $1 million. ACC revenue is $379,000 better than expectations year-to-date. That's a significant 38% contributor to our revenue variance. 151 new permits to date versus the budget of 143. We are 96% of the way to our target of 158 for the year. Golf revenue has exceeded the revenue target by $360,000 year-to-date, representing 36% of our revenue variance. And food service revenue is $268,000 better than expected year-to-date, which is 26% of our revenue variance. Looking at our total expenses, our operating expenses, excluding the cost of sales, are better than budget through October by $366,000. Wages and benefits are cumulatively over budget by $659,000. Wages alone are over budget by $439,000. 86% of the overage, or $375,000, is driven by food service. This is primarily due to unbudgeted vacation pay, overtime, and the addition of some unbudgeted positions at Kahidi and Tokwa. But it's important to note that the POA is offering extended operating hours compared to what our vendor provided, which has required additional staffing. Our gross margin, which is $208,000 better than expectations for food service, offsets 55% of the total wage overrun, providing a partial recovery. Benefits are over budget 11%, and I keep saying this every month. Some of these expenses were greater than what we planned in the budget. We are still under budget for personnel, marketing, and operating supplies. Operating supplies represent 9% of our operating expense variance, excluding salaries and benefits. Drivers within this category are spread over several departments for small tools and equipment. Also, gas and diesel fuel expenses are contributing to this variance, primarily from public works in all departments and some also from golf maintenance. Maintenance expenses are $376,000 under budget year-to-date, representing 37% of our operating expense variance. Emergency water main expense, maintenance expense contingencies haven't been needed, and sewer line maintenance and equipment maintenance funds remain unspent. Services are $453,000 under budget year-to-date. That's 44% of our operating expense variance. This is driven almost entirely by water and sewer emergency contract labor that has not been needed. Obviously, notable year-over-year influence continues to be our in-house management of food service. Here's our fiscal flash. These are variances to the budgeted net surplus and subsidy. The departments on the left are better than the budget. The ones on the right are below the budget expectations. And these results exclude reserve maintenance spending. Looking at the bottom right, in summary, our gross profit, expenses, net income, and net surplus were all favorable to the budget year-to-date. And again, these variances all exclude the Tenacity insurance proceeds. Here's a look at some of our net subsidies. The bar chart shows the amount of subsidy year-to-date for Parks and Rec, golf, and food service. Total subsidies through October were $795,000, collectively better than budget expectations and year-over-year results. Parks and Rec, once again, received the Gold Star for beating both budget and 2023 results by the greatest margins. Golf is performing considerably better than the budget, but in line with 2023 results. Food services have performed well against the 2023 subsidy levels required when being managed by our vendor, even though underperforming against the budget. Here's a look at our board reserve spending report. Total reserve spending budget, including carryovers from 2023, is $10.8 million. We have authorized spending for these projects to date of $4.7 million, and the divisional spending is in detail there, adds up to $3,156,000 to date. Here is some spending details for some of our larger projects. Previously, I'd had all of them on there, but the list was getting a little bit microscopic, so I've now just reduced it to only show some of the major ones there. The biggest project spending to date are the pavement preservation and street resurfacing, followed by engineering services for the main lift station, water meters and elevated water tank, and the sprinkler system at Chota. Continued progress for Tenassie is also on the project list. Here's a look at our net surplus and subsidy by division, net of reserve spending. This slide basically mirrors the one that you've been staring at for a long time when we were talking about the budget, the one that reflects the 2025 budget plan for all of next year. This is the year-to-date results that kind of match up to that for 2024. We have an operational surplus of $10.2 million to date, excluding the insurance proceeds, less our $3,156,000 in reserve spending, leaves us with a $7 million net surplus year-to-date. And that is it. We have one funding request this month from Golf for 2 fairway mowers at Kahidi, totaling $177,200. The budget was $178,000. These mowers were ordered back in 2022 and have now arrived. And we actually, you lock into a price that was agreed upon back in 2022. So the advantage is you don't pay the markup, even though you have to wait a while for them. So, do you guys want to vote on the project?
And I was going to accuse Wells of trying to get a new mower by burning another one, but
Yeah.
I guess that really, he's already ordered that one ahead of time.
That was thinking outside the box, Wells.
Yeah.
That was really.
Well, okay. Anybody have any questions for Judy?
You,
I'll just have a comment, make a
okay,
question.
sure.
Could you go back
Go to the mic, please.
to page 34?
Page 34.
Just a quick question.
Okay.
And this is maybe just for education to me.
Right there? Oh, is that 34?
34, yeah,
Okay, I'm
that's just an example that I picked out. That. Okay.
There we
The one thing, I'm guessing the reason you compare how we're actually doing to budget is for internal purposes to say, how well are we doing as to putting together a budget. But what to me is more meaningful to show to folks is how are we doing compared to last year?
And that's-
Actual.
Yes, and that's the brown up there.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so far less is it's primarily the food service.
Yeah,
Food service is
and
greatly
what
contributing to that.
my point is, this looks, you got a thumbs up because our actual is
Our
a
expenses
budget.
are less than the
It's
budget.
better, but we in fact are not doing as well compared to previous time period. So it kind of gives you a false,
Well, but like she said.
based on how
Yeah.
good we budget, we're doing great. Based on real money spent, we're not doing so great.
But remember that food services is included this year, not last year.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the number, I'm just saying what that shows you.
Yeah, we
By
also
using
have-
budget versus actual's more meaningful, I think, to most people, other than maybe internally, to say, well, how well are we doing as budgeters?
I think that number will be more meaningful this coming year because we will have a whole year of us actually operating food services internally. So
Yeah, and again,
that,
I'm not
again, yeah, that will be,
that, I'm questioning the.
Right.
the budget versus comparing to action, that's all that
point taken. Thank you very
Back to
much.
the capital request.
So I make a motion that we approve the purchase of the two mowers for $177,199.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Motion made and seconded. All in favor? As indicated, these were ordered in 2022, and we got the 2022 price, which is because we do so much business with these people.
And I just want to make a note, this is coming out of capital reserve, out of reserve funds.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure people know this is where we're spending the money from.
Thank you. Sorry for the
Thank
rush
you.
job there, trying to keep us all.
Oh, good job.
Get us out of here.
Thank you. We open the Other, I guess, we're down to, any others? There being no others, any others from the board?
Nope.
Okay, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.